There we go. Yes, Ghost in the Machine. Good morning, everybody. We're a little bit late this morning. It is 6:55, 55 degrees, on its way to 65 today. We're going to have a beautiful day. We had some showers. We'll get to the weather in a moment. It is April 6th, 2020, and here we go. Let's take a look at some of the headlines today. The numbers in New York City, or rather New York State, were down a little bit as opposed to the day before. And we're talking, of course, about the numbers of deaths and people getting the virus. But that may just be a blip. We don't know. Could we be, at least in New York, as the rest of the country increases its numbers of cases, could we be facing the good news, which is a slight dip and maybe leveling off? We don't know yet. And in local news, officials are saying 3 are killed in a suspected murder-suicide in Mount Vernon. That's big news when you have that kind of thing during these moments. And we'll get back to the virus right now. Yonkers has the most coronavirus cases in Westchester, by the way. They have got 1,273. That's an issue, as you may very well figure out, of density. Cuomo on shifting ventilators across the state. Nobody can handle this alone. And the yahoos up in upstate New York, maybe they don't have schools up there, or they don't attend the schools that they're in. They're all upset that we want to borrow ventilators, but we're not taking them from anyone. They're just knuckleheads up there. Okay, no COVID-19 testing at home yet, but quicker options are coming. A Rye Brook doctor is helping investigate a promising drug for COVID-19. And I don't know how much this matters, but a tiger in the Bronx Zoo has the COVID virus. Oh, and yesterday during the president's overview, he stopped Fauci from answering. I don't want to pick on him anymore. I don't want to pick on anybody else, but don't make the guy not talk, Mr. President. Anyway, we go now to the weather. And the weather on this April 6th, 2020. Welcome to the program. It's actually it's 54 right now, but it's on its way to 65 today. It will be sunny. One of the nicest days we've had so far this year is in the forecast. You may want to get out and do some jogging or bike riding, but keep your social distance. Tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature will be 41. The wind out of the south-southwest 5 to 10. Tomorrow, sunshine followed by increasing clouds. The high will be 60 degrees. The overnight low will be 42. Wednesday, mostly cloudy with scattered showers. The high will be 58. The overnight low will be 41. And Thursday, mostly cloudy with scattered showers. The high will be 57. And the weather is brought to you, of course, exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we come up on the top of the hour, we'll be supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and our friends over at the Beachmont Tavern. Now, they've got great hours over there. They're open from 11:30 to 1 a.m. So you want to go pick up some food, okay, that's the place to go, especially it's 10 o'clock. You got up late because you're home. Well, call them up, go pick up my favorite burger with sauteed onions like I did on Friday, and you will not be disappointed. They have the best wings in town. That is the Beachmont Tavern right here in New Rochelle. Tough weekend all around, as you might imagine, but we'd really have to go to some local news because these things matter. It's not all about the virus, but 3 people have been killed in a suspected murder-suicide in Mount Vernon. Officials said this on Sunday. It was reported in the Journal News last night. City officials said it's likely that a man killed his wife and daughter and then took his own life. This happened on West 4th Street. The residence is located across the street from the Doles Center. Michael Richard Sylvain, who identified himself as a family member, said he came to the scene and that police wouldn't let him in. Sylvain said he was able to speak with a woman who lived upstairs. She told Sylvain that she heard yelling and screaming, but could not decipher what is said. That is all we know right now. Yonkers has the most confirmed coronavirus cases in Westchester County, and that makes perfect sense in that it is the most dense and the most populated city here in Westchester, and one of the most popular dense or population dense cities in New York State, period. With more than 1,250 cases, the largest city in the state makes up a good deal of the county. Now, New Rochelle, the first municipality in New York to face a cluster, has 609 positive cases. Mount Vernon has more than 540. And it was only on March 3rd, a month ago, that Westchester recorded its first confirmed case. As we move on, it is 7 o'clock. And just looking at it, Ossining has a fairly large number of people, 268. Okay, New York will move forward with plans to shift unused medical supplies from upstate hospitals to areas of the state hardest hit by the coronavirus. The policy, Cuomo said, will be key in the state's fight against COVID-19, which has killed almost 4,300 New Yorkers as of yesterday afternoon. He says, quote, "The concept here that people have to get is nobody can handle this alone." Cuomo's pleased that New York is one state that needs to help upstate and downstate came as the number of deaths increased to 594 on Sunday. Now, that's Saturday into Sunday. But Cuomo said the increase was slightly less than Saturday, and hospitalizations were also down, giving a glimmer of hope. And my snarky comments before were dedicated to some of the information on the web from people upstate. Obviously, not everybody. People are going to get upset. Not everybody up there is a knucklehead. But when you've got what are essentially right-wing nuts getting all worked out of shape because they have to share, there's just something fundamental with that, and even indicative sometimes of that political point of view. Sometimes. Home testing for the new coronavirus may sound like a good idea, but U.S. regulators say it's still too risky. They've stopped companies that quickly launched home testing kits until they can show their products can accurately detect the virus. For now, the only way Americans can get tested is at hospitals, clinics, or drive-through sites with a doctor's orders. After a botched rollout, testing in the U.S. has ramped up thanks to high-volume testing machines and new rapid tests. Last week, federal officials said totals topped 1.4 million, and labs are processing nearly 100,000 tests daily. That's the threshold many experts say is needed to track the virus. And one Rybrook doctor, a Dr. Barry Zingman, who's a student at NYU School of Medicine, actually he was there in the early 80s when the AIDS epidemic was ravaging the country. Well, he is, and now Mr. Zingman, a Rybrook resident since 1992, is working to find a promising drug. And in the struggle against it, he's now one of many scientists and doctors searching. He's a clinical director of infectious diseases for Montefiore Health and a professor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And he's looking at remdesivir, which forgive me if I didn't pronounce it correctly. It is an antiviral therapy under review for patients who have lung complications requiring supplemental oxygen or a ventilator. Now, one of the things, and I don't mean to scare you, okay, but if I don't talk truth, I don't belong here. One of the things that's emerging, and we saw the number, the governor mentioned it the other day, only 20% of the people who go on a ventilator come off. When someone goes on a ventilator, it usually doesn't end well, and we need to take a good hard look at that and the nature of this virus, and we'll get into that a little later. A little light part of this, perhaps. Federal officials confirmed that a tiger at the Bronx Zoo tested positive for COVID-19 after multiple animals developed virus symptoms. Nadia, a 4-year-old Malayan tiger, was tested after her sister Azul got the virus. That's about all I want to say about that. I don't think we're going to get it from... Oh, no, maybe a zookeeper gave it to the animal. I don't know if the animal can give it back to other workers. It is 7:04. Now, Rockland Ed Day really accomplished and really level-headed county executive, but nonetheless, he's been having a little bit of a beef with the governor over enforcement and over enforcement of stay-at-home, social distancing, etc. At any rate, Governor Cuomo's administration insisted that counties already have tools to enforce the ban during coronavirus crises, despite Rockland County executive's call for more firm guidance. Melissa DeRosa, secretary to the governor, said she spoke Saturday with A about his call for a containment area in Spring Valley and Muncie. Now, everybody's getting ticklish. I smell a little politics there on both sides. Nobody wants to be the one, and in Jersey, they're much more direct about it. Give them some credit. No one wants to be the one to crack down on a religious community, and that's really what that boils down to. Just the folks, and we respect greatly their religion in the Hasidic community. They have to follow the rules too. Frankly, Ed Day knows what they are, and so does the governor. Neither of them, I guess, want to be the one. Unfortunate. We saw, for example, several years ago when the Hasidic community was redirecting money from the school system up in East Ramapo to their private schools and keeping them away from the public schools. Everybody knew it. The governor knew it. My grandmother knew it, who's dead. My granddaughter knows it. But the governor, and as great a job as he's doing now, he was chicken to challenge them, and so too was the state education department. Now, speaking of different counties, on Monday, that's today, Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Orange, and Dutchess will begin holding arraignments and bail hearings on video. And a defendant who is detained by the police department will be placed in front of a camera, a Skype program or a similar program, and then will be seen by a judge who will be at a separate location. Each member of the court will be in a different location to help stop the spread of the virus. Leaf blowers have been in the news. The village of Sleepy Hollow brought it up, but now they have been verboten. The village of Sleepy Hollow is temporarily banning the use of leaf blowers to make sure residents are safe during the coronavirus pandemic. Effective immediately, they have been banned in most of the towns and cities here in Westchester. Now, again, the state's death toll has passed 3,500, and the governor, the president, certainly Mr. Fauci, everyone is predicting, and even the Surgeon General of the United States, that this week and likely next, the president himself said there will be deaths. The governor has said we will be reaching our peak. And some of the terms being used, this will be like 9/11, this will be like Pearl Harbor. Now, some of that is likely hyperbole to get us to cooperate, to stay home, to enforce social distancing, even as we hope, by the way, that at least here in New York, as in Spain and Italy now, the number might finally be leveling off, but it's too early to tell. And nationwide, because just the same way it moved, if you will, from east to west, from China to Europe to the United States, similarly here in America, there are states west of us and south of us, and even north, up in the Midwest, that have yet to be hit hard by the virus. So whether or not the numbers on a national level will level off is another question. But they are preparing us. They're telling us this is going to be the most difficult time. So you've been warned, but still keep it in perspective, please. And here's some of the numbers. In New York City, 63,003 cases, 2,000 deaths. New York State, almost 14,000. Over almost 3,600 deaths. United States, 301,000, 8,100 deaths. Now, in our research this morning, some of the models are beginning to show a good fracture, if you will. We've heard numbers predicted as many as 250,000 dying. And again, it all depends on what the numbers are, and they have to change the models every day. Today we saw one that was closer to 100,000, maybe even 80 or 90,000. We don't really know. But the important issue is this, that if we relax, and this is a tough spot the president is in, so you got to work with him on this. Despite the some silly things he sometimes says or telling Fauci to shut up, he is in a tough spot, no matter what he does. So is the governor and every other municipal leader. Sooner or later, you're going to have to start easing things up for the sake of the economy and even the sake of society's sanity. And the question is when. But the risk is if they do it too soon, those numbers will shoot up again. And that's the issue. When the numbers of virus cases, confirmed cases, go down and the number of dead go down, we have to realize that the reason those numbers are getting better is because we're practicing social distancing, because we're wearing a mask when we go to the store, because we're cleaning surfaces. So we have to, as does the president and everyone else involved in this, constantly balance those two things. So hopefully the numbers will get better. There's some indication, at least in New York, and I'm only focusing on New York, that they might be. Certainly not in Rockland yet as it moves up there, but perhaps now in Westchester. We'll be talking with George Latimer in about 25 minutes time now. We'll be talking to Vince Russo in a little while. So please keep that in mind. And also the state did send to us about 65,000, some real big number of those N95 masks. That is the federal government, Deb. And that is a good thing as we move forward. You know what? Some of the things that people are concerned about, and during my monologue, I'll get rather personal on this. The piece in the Post yesterday, Postscript Science, they're trying to figure out why more men than women are being killed by COVID-19, and they think the reason is in the DNA. In Italy, men account for at least 70% of all coronavirus deaths, while South Korea has seen more confirmed cases in female patients than in males. A higher percentage of men have been felled by it. Here in New York City, more men than women are tested positive for the virus, with 55% women, and they do believe it has something to do with DNA. The homogeneous chromosome benefit other animals too. Human females are not the only ones that benefit from that double X advantage, and that's what they think it is, double X chromosome. I'm not going to get into the science of it. Suffice it to say that they do believe that it is related to the genome of the individual. Betsy McCoy, a friend of this program and someone we've got to get back on, is and she's very much to the right, but also very science-based. And there's a not in contradiction, by the way, as some liberal critics might say. But she's saying even the scientists can't be sure on this, and that it's a best guess on when this peaks. So Betsy is probably the country's foremost proponent of reducing the amount of infection in hospitals. Next time you go in a hospital when this is over, if you're not already for some reason exposed to a hospital, next time you go to a hospital or a doctor's office, you'll notice Purell everywhere. Betsy McCoy, he almost single-handedly made that happen. So we're going to get her on the show as soon as we can. Now, this is an interesting sidebar to the virus. The coronavirus pandemic is taking a toll on the legal system as lawsuits related to the outbreak have been pouring in. Attorneys told the New York Post and the Journal News that countless legal issues could arise as a result of the crisis related to employment, labor, law, insurance, coverage, landlord, tenant matters. It's going to be a mess. Now, another type of lawsuit that is in the news because of this is a divorce business. Cooped up, New Yorkers are flooding lawyers' phone lines with diverse inquiries, and an avalanche of filings are coming once the court reopens. People, and here's a quote from one lawyer, people are realizing that they can't stand each other. In the middle of the night, I get a call from a client who now realizes she has nothing in common with her husband. Well, that's because you're not supposed to be together 24 hours a day and being all over one another. Well, that's my take. But yeah, no surprise there. And then after they finally go back to their normal lives, they'll probably still love each other. Maybe, who knows, maybe they'll even get back together. And still a lot of brouhaha over the captain of the, and I can't wait to talk later in the week with Harlan Ullman, depending on where we're going to be broadcasting from. We'll cover that in a little while. He was fired. And one of the things that I mentioned the other day, and was just a hunch, and I have to pull a President Rush Limbaugh or President Trump on this, I was kind of right about it. It turns out that this guy, this captain of his ship, kept going to his boss. And his boss was trying to go on the down low. Come on. And he finally said, bullspit. And he knew when he sent that memo to 20 other people that he would be losing his job. He knew that. But my goodness, in the United States today, someone who stands on principle and not power, this is an extraordinary man, and his name is Captain Brett Crozier. You'll be reading a lot more about him in the days and weeks to come because he had, there are like 400 sailors now on his ship, on his aircraft carrier. And he felt that there were going to be more people sick, people dying, and he was fed up with his boss and did the right thing. He's the equivalent of a whistleblower. Now, I do understand something, and that's why what he did cost him. And I can't quibble with the right of the Navy to say, well, we can't have a guy going around it no matter what the issue is. This is one of those kind of... This is one of those, how many angels could you put on the head of a pin? Because he did break protocol. He did do something that was fireable. They're allowed to fire him because they don't have confidence in him because he embarrassed the Navy and it made it look like they didn't have their act together. Well, frankly, they didn't. And he paid a price, but this is a guy going to have no trouble getting a job. This is a guy who went to the very esteemed nuclear power school that very people can get through, dealing with nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants. A very extraordinary man, and almost his entire West Point class, or other Annapolis class, is coming to defend him. A man of extraordinary character, but losing his job may stick because the Navy cannot have that, and I have very mixed feelings about that because you have to follow the chain of command. And in the Navy, when you out a bad boss, you're toast. But maybe we need more people to do that because the one area in Harlan Ullman and I disagree, maybe it's because he's from the military, is America has a lot of bad bosses out there, and they need to be outed. They need to be outed mostly as this guy's boss was, for being incompetent and taking and maybe endangering the lives of other people. And we see that all the time. We see it in corporate America too. I've known people in corporate America who committed suicide because they had a bad boss. And everybody covers for the boss, and everybody closes together, and they point to the person who committed suicide. Well, he or she just couldn't hack it. Well, if someone, in the case I remember, Merrill had ratted out the woman that made his life so miserable, maybe he wouldn't have. So good for you. And that's why the thousands of men on his ship cheered him when he left. He actually put the lives of human beings ahead of a fake, phony, right around the flag protocol of his boss. It is 7:18. We've only a couple of other things, and then we will get rolling. Man, I can't believe this. It's a sad story. Maeve Kennedy Townsend McKean and her 8-year-old son, Gideon, they died chasing a soccer ball. A soccer ball. And that's why I'm glad I was never rich or famous. Because they think they're never going to die. Like John Kennedy taking off in the worst possible junior conditions. You know, I can see myself doing that. Hey, I'm the son of a president. I'm world famous. I'm rich. God's not going to take me. God don't care. I got news for you. Same thing. God bless these people, but that's just sad. And we may as well end on a fun note as we head towards our guests today. 2 fun notes. We have a judge, a Long Island judge, who copped to stealing dirty undies from the home of a female neighbor, and he has resigned from the bench and has been stripped of his law license, I guess for breaking and entering, because is that steal? Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's perverted, but anyway, that for another day. Suffolk County District Judge Robert Cicali pleaded guilty to second-degree attempted burglary, a felony for breaking into the home of a 23-year-old woman. That's our guest. And, well, what can I say? A panty thief. Now, one other bit of positive news. Okay. Sports figures all over the place, owners of teams, big deal. Just a day after Patriots owner Robert Kraft donated 300,000 masks to New York, Nets owner Joe Tsai is delivering 2,000 ventilators to the state. Governor Andrew Cuomo described the gesture as a big deal, and it's going to make a significant difference. And all kinds of people are chipping in, even the sometimes, and he earns it, owner of the Knicks and Rangers. Oh, and by the way, just people will use anything. What did Rahm Emanuel famously say? Never waste a crisis. Yale students are using the virus as an excuse to lower standards. Well, you know what it is? Maybe before they went to Yale, they went to some of the New York City schools where they want to do away with all standards and just push you through, no matter how intellectually deficient or ill-informed you are. You know, I got warned today because of some of the technical difficulties we have, which we should not have had. Don't get too cranky on the air, because I had a rough weekend. Well, I am cranky about some of this stuff, and I ought to be cranky about some of this stuff, and so too should you. And I have mixed feelings about, for example, the president. He said, we've got a stockpile of this other thing. The president's not a doctor. Now, where the president is right, and even Fauci will agree with the president, where the president is right is, let me make sure I got the right time here. I'm getting a text from a guest. My calendar said 8:20. Oh, no, that's right. No. He was right. I hate saying this, but as usual, you are correct. I gave the mayor the wrong time. See you. Folks, I'm doing this all by myself here in this very empty train station at 8:35. Okay, I'm back. Where was I? Oh, yes. One of the things that even Fauci said about this quinine thing is, hey, if you're in a situation where you're desperate, try it. It can't hurt. And that's the president's point of view. But there's not a lot of evidence that it does work. And to wit, a very brief monologue. Last week when George Latimer, and we'll get to Vince, he's on hold, he knows the drill. Last week, George Latimer said it will touch you. And it has touched me perhaps now twice. It's amazing that two of really close friends of mine, one passed away after a very brief attack of the coronavirus. By the way, they tried the quinine thing with him. It didn't do anything. Only 2 weeks ago, he was perfectly fine and on the phone with me. A hockey player, great shape, 6'1", 195, built like a stallion, in terrific shape. He contracted the virus likely at a conference for his business. Perfectly fine 2 Saturdays ago. Just shot slightly more than 2 weeks ago. By Thursday, he couldn't breathe and he had the virus, his wife and daughter as well. Again, the male thing, we don't know. They had moderate to light symptoms. He had severe symptoms. Could barely walk more than 2 feet. Worst he's ever felt. This is a guy, classic, a stoic type of guy, right out of the mold of a Lou Gehrig, you know. 4 days later, no improvement. Day or two after that, now we're coming up on this past week, they put him in the hospital. Put him on 100% oxygen. Stabilized for a while, got worse. Thursday, they decided to put him on a ventilator. And Saturday, he passed. That's how quick it happens. Now, this is not to scare you, but this is to say that this virus is going to touch each and every one of us. This guy was my friend for 55 years. And they don't really know why some people, like that 42-year-old that Aaron Burnett spoke with his wife, he went the same way. Nobody knows. And that's one of the things about this virus, even myself when this first happened, well, X numbers are going to die, and that's the way it is. But the difference between this and the flu and some of the other things that we've dealt with is it did not have this virulent, expedient, rapid decline and death in people who were perfectly healthy in that period of time. He even had pneumonia, beat the pneumonia, by the way. So anyway, his name was Bob. That's as much as I'll say about it. God bless him. He had a million friends, and a very popular person, great businessman, great family. Gone now. He was 69 though, but don't think of an old man. This guy was in almost Olympic shape. Another friend of mine, can't get a hold of him now. He's in a nursing home for 2 days, and he had opening symptoms. So I got a lot of praying to do. In my own way, given my own agnosticism. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We're running a tad late. We'll get to Vince. No, we'll get to Vince now, and then we'll come back and do the weather. He also knew the individual that passed away. Good morning, Vince Russo. How are you?
Hey, Bob. Good morning.
Have I got a drug for you? Hey, did you see the president yesterday telling Fauci not to answer?
No, I didn't see that. But, your comment about men getting this more than women, I'm surprised Trump doesn't say that this is a conspiracy by women to get back at men for whatever.
No, I don't think the president would go that far, but...
Well,
but you know what? I kind of understand his point. When you're in and I forget the word, but as a Hail Mary, it certainly can't hurt. But to say that, but to push it as hard as he's pushing it is I get that, but I think he's pushing it a little too much. And I know that, in fact, one politician, I forget where he was, says we shouldn't be listening to doctors.
Yeah, of course.
Now, what about some of these religious wackadoodles?
Oh, it's crazy.
God will save you. He's not doing a very good job of it. Well, no, they told us there'd be millions dying, and now there are only tens of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who is allowing mass gatherings should be arrested. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're religious, if they're political, if they are social. You have a mass gathering, you should be arrested because you're endangering the public at large, and that can't be. I read a thing that the city of Calgary has said that there will be no mass gatherings until the end of June in that city. So that means if the NHL even has an inkling about returning the season, it's pretty much going to be history. I don't see how they're going to be able to do it. Well,
one sports writer wrote the other day that he doesn't think that they should be bringing back any of the sports until they have a vaccine.
Well, I agree. And, what's going to happen, I think, is that people are still going to be gun-shy even when they give the green light to go back to all of this stuff, because I don't think that the virus is going to be completely eliminated at some point, and people are still going to say, well, gee whiz, I mean, we may be in danger if we go into a sports arena or, a meeting of some sort. So I think there's going to be a lot of this stuff that's going to be residual after all of this ends.
Oh, sure, and I don't think we really know how we're going to deal with it. I hate the expression "lose respect" because I understand politics, and that's why I always preface it with the county executive Ed Day is really a man of good account, and who I have a lot of respect for. But he's showing some cracks in his armor by asking the governor to make the disbursement of people more enforceable. Because what he's really saying is, I don't want to be the one to go and tell these Hasidic religious groups that they can't meet like that. I want to be able to say, and it's totally transparent, that you said.
Now, who's saying this?
Ed Day is the county executive in Rockland, because we have the same problem in New Jersey on the shore. We have the problem in Brooklyn, and look, it's a problem that has to do with the nature of their religion. And I'm not picking on their religion. I pick on all religions equally, but I respect them. I just think that they lead to folly in these kinds of circumstances. but they have, they're all at the same funerals together. They're in some cases, and I'm sure not all Hasidic groups are doing this, but out of respect for religion, our politicians become timid. And they can't do that. And I'm surprised. That day is not a timid guy, but he wants to be able to say, the governor said. Go ahead and enforce it. You got cops.
It's true. And you see that down in the South. I mean, there's a lot of these evangelicals who are saying, we don't care what the governor says, or we're just going to continue to have these services where hundreds or thousands of people gather, and it's crazy.
And also, you know what they keep saying, too? Don't forget to keep tithing. I'm going to form a religion, damn it. Here we are, sinking by the head, my business. I am going to come out as a minister. I think I'd be a great man. All I got to do, I could probably mail away for a divinity degree.
You probably could.
And then I'll have a church service right here at the train station. I am sure I can get some people, if I just say it right, and use lots of adjectives and adverbs like someone else we know. I'm sure that I can get a following, and they'll give me 10% of what they make.
Well, it should be the Church of What's Happening Now.
And it's a nonprofit. And now your church, have you guys been having virtual congregations?
We have, yes. Our minister has been filming them, and we've been calling in and watching it on the computer.
I'm going to be a son of a bee now. Is there a PayPal application for you to tithe from a distance?
No, but that's a good question. We should have something.
You probably
like
should. I'm going out.
Have that,
Please,
yeah.
God, you understand. It's not you I have the beef with. It's your lieutenants. Okay, please. But actually, are people getting solace from it? Because some people need that now. I need lots of solace, but that I do not need.
I think so.
Yeah, I would say so, because if you're certain.
Yeah, and I think people, need some sort of way to cope, and I think that that's one of them, not the only one. It was an interesting comment you made before about how people, are cooped together and divorce rates are going up, or threats of divorce are going up, because people find they can't stand each other. And I thought your comment was not correct in that you should be able to be cooped up and not hate each other.
It all depends, though, because, a lot of people, a lot of couples think we're supposed to be together all the time and do things together. But see, in your specific case, you watch different programs in one room and your missus in another sometimes when you're in your hockey binge. But there are a lot of couples where the man or the woman thinks they're supposed to be together all the time. And that is very dangerous.
Well,
because you need some autonomy in this world. Not everybody, but most people do.
Well, you do need autonomy, but you can have autonomy and yet not have a problem being together 24/7 in an emergency situation like we have now. I think that
now, if you had a smaller house and your missus was with you when you go to the basement and you work on your armaments, or when you're doing woodwork, although you've done that, maybe your case is special, but yeah, I accept your disagreement with great respect. I'm sure there are lots of couples for whom that's true.
See, I don't think it's a matter of being together per se, but I think it's more a matter of being dependent.
Oh, so okay. Yes.
If one spouse, and it could be either gender, is dependent on the other for entertainment or for their
that's what I'm getting
validity, or however you want to put it. Yeah, then I think that that's an issue. But I think that that's an issue no matter what. Well,
it is an issue no matter what, even for people that are dating. A lot of people need to. You don't love me if you don't call me 10 times a day. Well, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Right. But still, the fact is that divorces are up, and and there will be blood. There's a movie after that.
You mentioned something that just triggered a thing that I meant to mention to you. You say you call me 10 times a day. They keep calling and calling, and I'm not answering. They're playing your song.
That's 07740.
Well, they had on last night. They had on an episode of The Honeymooners, and it was the one where Ralph's the janitor. You almost never see that one.
Uh,
And he installs the house phone, and they keep buzzing and buzzing, and he he says they can keep calling, but I'm not answering. And Alice tells him, but they're playing your song.
oh, I love. By the way, when I was preparing for that story yesterday, I was thinking about one of my favorite lines from the play Becket about how the king hates his wife. One of the great put downs of a wife in the history of all time. When she says she's all upset, folks, and if you know it's an old movie from 1960, but it's about the true story, but it's based on it, between the King of England and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket. They were great friends that used to go out into the town wenching, drinking and wenching with women. And the Queen didn't like it, and she hated Becket, and she was always fighting with her husband, and she was very selfish and entitled. But still, at one point she says, what about me? I'm your wife. You're always running around with Becket. And then she says to him, he lures you away from the duties you owe to me. And my favorite line is when he says, there's Latimer, I got to call him back. One of my favorite line is, oh, that. You've never been a wife to me. Your body, madam, is an empty desert which duty forced me to wander alone. I made you 3 children very dutifully. Thank the Lord, my duty is done. By the way, I recommend you don't say that to a woman because she will shoot you, Vince. I got to get to Mr. Latimer.
Bob, just let me say this before George comes on. George, if you're listening, you are doing a great job.
Yeah, everybody says that.
I have been watching the way you've been handling yourself, and you've been a model for the way executives in government should be conducting themselves. So, George, great work. Keep it up.
All right. Well, thanks, Vince. I will pass that along because I know he's calling on the other line. So I got to get to Mr. Latimer right now. I will call him. Oh, God, this working alone is getting to me, but what am I going to do? We'll be talking more about that when I start doing this from a remote location. I got to call the county executive. Listen to some music. Through the miracle of technology, we have secured the county executive, and we need to pass along of Vince's comments to him. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. It is 6:36, and we're only a minute late because of my phone issue. On the telephone with us now is the county executive. Please welcome George Latimer. Good morning, CE. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
Pretty well. You know, your biggest fan is a guy that lives in New Jersey, Vince Russo, one of our regular guests. He says he wanted me to pass along. He said he's been following what you do. He just said this to the audience, and that he thinks you're doing a great job. Now, he is a Republican elected official in another state, so.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think, and I appreciate Vince's comments. I think this is a perfect time for us not to be Democrats or Republicans, just to focus on what do we have to accomplish and do it. And if we can do that, there are things to fight about, and we'll fight about them later. And I think Vince sounds like the kind of guy I'd have a beer with after we finished having a.
Well, he's prissy. He might want tea. He's a little prissy. He might want tea, but I'm just kidding.
Tea is fine.
Yeah, he's actually
I'm a flexible guy.
No, you are, and you like to go. No, I'm just kidding because I know he's listening. County executive, I noted to you last night in a text, but last week you tried to get into people's hearts about the issue of it will touch you, and it certainly touched me this weekend, my friend of 55 years. Great health. I mean, we're talking about a guy, one of those people who almost was like an Olympic athlete, great shape,
Yep.
Horse. No one knows why. Within 10 days, he was gone. 10
It's
days.
frightening. It's frightening.
And
We have stories. We have stories like that everywhere. Glenn Bolito, my friend, our friend, many of
yeah.
us know him from Eastchester's town councilman.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Complained a little bit of some cold-like symptoms. It got worse. He went to the hospital. He was gone, just like snapping the fingers. Peter Plotty out of Mount Vernon. He was commenting on my Facebook page. A couple days go by. I hear he's in the hospital. Gone. And this thing is everywhere, and it's nowhere. You look outside, you can't see it because it's invisible, and yet everything is stopped because of it. This tiny little virus that once it gets inside of you, you might 80% of us fight it off successfully. 20% do not. 20% get sick, and then some percentage of us die. And the randomness. I have two colleagues that I served with in the New York State Senate, Jim Seward and Ted O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
They're in ICUs in Cooperstown and Rochester right now. Why them? They're both a little younger than, Jim's a little older, Ted's a little younger than me. I don't know why them, and it's impossible to know.
No, there isn't.
But what it does do,
Go ahead.
what it
No, I'm
does
sorry.
do, if I may, is it humbles us. We have the greatest military on the planet. We have, before 30 days ago, we had the greatest economy in the world's ever known. Maybe 45 days ago, we have these structures: the Constitution, the independent press, the independent judiciary, the checks and balances of the legislative to the executive, and we pride ourselves. We strut around as Americans. We are, we're the great Americans. 250 years, not quite, and we've fashioned this wonderful democracy. And then all of a sudden, you realize how fragile everything is.
Mm-hmm.
That if healthcare becomes living or dying, not healthcare, if living or dying becomes the most important thing, that economy gets shut down. No NBA, NHL finals, no MLB opening day, no Masters, no Kentucky Derby. Stop. No bars and restaurants where
Nope.
we have people working and generate profit for the owners and tax for the government. Stop. No, let's get together and have a cup. Stop. And we're vulnerable, and I don't think we want to admit that. As individuals, we're proud. As men and women, we don't like to think that anybody can tell us what to do. I mean, that we do the right thing in our own mind, and I think it's not ironic. It's almost prophetic that this is the week of Passover. This is the week of Lent, where you have Good Friday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter, in which the Almighty, through the two largest religions here in the United States, have reminded us that there has to be sacrifice before there's redemption.
Mm-hmm.
We can't strut around redeemed unless you go through the Garden of Gethsemane, unless you put a mezuzah on your door and the plague passes over your door.
It's
you
interesting.
have nothing.
It's really
And
interesting.
that's how I view this right now. This is almost biblical in what we're facing.
Our guest is George Latimer, County Executive here in Westchester County. Now, we saw some hopeful numbers. Now, you could tell us how they are in the county, and I'm talking about it at large. New York City had a huge number of deaths, but it was a little lower than the day before. And the governor is hopeful, but just hopeful, because sometimes those numbers lag, as you well know, that maybe New York City, or the state rather in general, is leveling off. How are we doing in the county?
Well, the first thing is that if you go back a month ago, it's now a month, New Rochelle and Westchester County shot to the top of every list in the country except for that place in Washington State, Kirkland, Washington, because over there it got into a nursing home. You had immediate deaths. You had just a dozen deaths right off the bat. But Westchester County, and they started testing in that cohort in New Rochelle. New Rochelle had 115 cases, and you had regions of the country together that didn't have 115 cases. And people thought it was geographically attached to the city of New Rochelle. Right now, Yonkers has double the number of cases of New Rochelle. Mount Vernon and Greenberg are competitive in terms of number of cases. Westchester, in the initial stages, had more cases than New York City. And people thought, what's up with Westchester? Now, New York City, because of the size and volume, the contagion has spread. It's very impacted. Nassau County, with superior population, has passed Westchester County. Suffolk County, with superior population, is closing in on us. Now, this isn't a horse race. We're not doing the NBA standings, but what it tells you is that the contagion is now spread everywhere. And what happened in New Rochelle and what happened in Westchester is we tested more than other communities did. Because we tested more, the royal we, led by Governor Cuomo, realized that we need more hospital beds, so we're turning the county center into another 120 beds. We realized that we need more PPE and more nurses, so we put a call out for more PPE and more nurses a month ago, ahead of places right now in other parts of the country where they say, well, we have 200 cases in the state. Yeah, you know of 200 cases in the state. You don't know if you know all the cases that are there.
That's right.
And it's not a math game. Here's the problem. If you don't know you have 200 cases, if you think you have 200 cases, but you got 2,000 cases, when some percentage of those guys get sick, they walk into your hospital door and you didn't get the PPEs. You didn't get the additional hospital beds. You didn't scream and yell for the additional ventilators. And then you're caught short, and then you have people in hallways on gurneys dying. And that's what happened in Italy. And it hit them by surprise. They didn't think it was coming there. It was in China. And then the next thing you know, why Italy? Why Italy next? Why Spain now? Well, the bottom line is that what we're seeing in New York, I don't think we're flattened out yet, and I don't know if it's a trend. We had less deaths the night before last night, than we did the night before that. If that becomes a multiple-day trend, then you could argue that we're starting to flatten out. But I would say this, like your friend, like Glenn Bolito, other people that I know, every person is not a trend. Every person is not a statistic. It's a human being that they loved people. Yep. People loved them. They had a life, and that life is gone. And this virus is going to permanently change the way we look at things, in my judgment. For those of us in this generation, we're going to look back on this, and we're going to say, do you remember that? Do you remember 2020? Assuming we survive it. There's no guarantee that you or I or another person will be lucky enough to get through this. And if it does anything, it'll make us more humble, which is always a good thing in my judgment. Number two, it'll make us more ready to be prepared for things and not listen to bull. When people start saying, it's not a big deal. You get led down the primrose path when you hear that stuff.
Well, you do. County executive.
As an athlete.
Yes, go ahead.
As an athlete, Bob. Well, I know I'm talking a lot.
No, go ahead. No, please. That's why you're here.
You know as an athlete, and you're an athlete, you know how you have to prepare to get on the ice. If you just went on the ice and just said, I feel pretty good, you stretch, you'll pull a muscle. You'll hurt yourself. You've got to go through certain ritual things to be prepared to go on the ice and play adult ice hockey. I can't do what you can do. And, and I look at it as you prepare yourself. Well, that's the same thing. You prepare yourself for what's coming. You don't sit there and say, I think I'll ride down to the rink and I'll just lace them up and I'll jump out on the ice.
No. In fact, I've been trying to find places to roller skate because when it comes back, if I don't skate by then, I won't be able to come back at this age. I have to prepare. One of the things about this virus that I was guilty of it when it first came out too, it's not just another flu. I've known people all my life who get the flu, and yes, some people die if they're really infirm or they get a case of pneumonia that is so intractable. But this thing is virulent in a way we don't understand. It's a killer. And until it touches you in the way that it did your colleagues, my friend, and many others, you don't really see it that way. The people becomes an abstraction, just other people. Now, this particular guy, county executive, when I tell you, in fact, he was a hockey player, that he was in almost Olympic shape, just one of the top guns, great. Just, something about this virus is we don't understand, and it's not just another case of the flu.
No, it's not. And, the harsh reality is we do not have a vaccine for this to prevent it or to reduce the chances of getting it, and we don't have an antiviral drug to treat it once you have it. We have those things for the flu. When you get influenza, there are things that you can take that will lessen the flu. Now, as you said, if you're already weakened and sick, the flu can kill you. When we live long enough, something's going to get us. And so we're 85 years old, and the flu hits us at a time when we're weak, and then we don't make it past that point. But what you've described, and I have the comparables as well, was people who had no outward signs of illness, for whom this particular virus, the way it hit them, was able to bring them to their knees and kill them. And I think what it does do when you step back and you look at this, you realize we have tremendous science, but we don't have a cure for this yet, and we're foolish to have those of us who know nothing about science, and that would be me, medicine, that would be me, getting out and talking about anything about, well, it's been shown in a couple of examples that taking will make you better. I heard about on television about the potential for plasma treatment. When I saw the thing within 24 hours, I had 2 calls from 2 people who know me who had desperately ill relatives, and they wanted to know could they get the plasma treatment. The plasma treatment isn't there yet to be treated. They're trying to extract it from those who've survived the illness, but the desperation is so great, and the desire to have a cure is so great because people are dying. But we don't have a cure, and every time we talk about, there's a promising thing, it could be a year, 2 years. We don't know. And when you throw out that false hope just by loose lips, you bring people's hopes up. Oh, if we could get this, maybe I could save my cousin. Maybe I could save my uncle. And I'm not saying don't try. I mean, try. By all means, do everything you can do. But don't put out the last-ditch efforts to try as an example of, here's a cure. We have something that can get us back. The desire to restart our economy is tremendous. I can tell you right now, the county government is in dire straits financially. I don't quite know, as I sit here today, how we are going to address the amount of revenue that we have lost already and that we're likely to lose over the next X number of months. And there are individuals who might be listening to this podcast who are saying stuff, I lost my job 3 weeks ago. What am I going to do? Who's hiring? Or somebody who had a business. They laid off their employees. They closed up the business, and they look at each other. They go, these were our life savings. What are we going to do? Or I have a 401k. I was planning on retiring that. That thing has hit the skids. It's got minimal value in it. Now, all of those things are real problems, but you can't restart the economy until you're sure that you beat the health thing, because the worst thing that could ever happen, you restart the economy too soon, the contagion spreads again, and then you have to reshut it down. If you have to reshut it the second time, nobody's going to have any faith in anything. And
That's
then
so
you will
true.
have, if you don't have it already, you'll absolutely have October 1929.
Let's get to some of those as practical matters. County Executive George Latimer, our guest here at the 7:51. You announced the other day that in certain hardship cases, I may not be capturing it correctly, in certain cases, some people may be able to get a tax break. How is that going to work out, and how is the county going to pay its bills without money?
All right, let me. You always have to make sure you clarify.
Well, that's why I'm
exactly
asking.
What I said. I prepared a piece of legislation for the consideration of the Board of Legislators, which would eliminate the late fees on county property taxes across the towns of Westchester County. And the late fee basically means that an April 30th deadline now would become a July 15th deadline. If you don't pay a late fee, you pay it April 30th, you pay it May 30th, you pay it June 30th, you pay it July 15th. It's the same amount of money. So eliminating the late fees, in essence, gives you an extra 2.5 months to pay your county property tax bill if you're in town. Now, why July 15th? Because that's the day you have to file your federal and state income tax. It's an easy date to remember. This is the day I got to square everything. If you're having trouble, you have to pay taxes. That means you own a home or something. If you've lost your business or your job or whatever, what's going to happen in those 75 days? Well, the feds passed this big bill, the stimulus bill, and it involves money to individuals who are out of work and individual small business owners who've lost, tremendous amounts of money. So over 75 days, there's enough time for this stimulus to kick in, and then hopefully you'll get some payments that will allow you to pay your taxes. There's a problem. I offered a proposal, and the Board of Legislators have listened to a group of town supervisors, and some of those towns, I'm saying they're all, some of those town supervisors have said we can't lift the fees. The fees are important revenue for our government. We can't lift the fees. It's very hard for us to administer that. What are the standards by which a person can claim hardship? We don't want this. We want a plan. We'll just reduce the fees. We'll lower it down from one number to another number. So I've said, look, I think you're wrong. I think the taxpayers deserve to have no late fees and be given an extra 75 days. Now, the Board of Legislators will discuss it and vote on it. If they vote for their plan, which is reduced fees, not eliminated fees, which is my plan, then that's what the law will be. But it's a little frustrating because right now every government, every town government is in the same boat that I'm in. The bottom has fallen out of your government right now. The only thing that will save us will be some type of federal loan program that will allow us to balance our budget and pay the money back over time, or grant, if that's what it's going to be, in order for us to stabilize ourselves. In the same way that the federal government stabilized banks when they had the TARP program, and they allowed banks not to go under, but to survive and stabilize. Why? Because they were too important. You couldn't let all banks go under. You'd have a larger crisis. Well, you can't let all local governments go under. We provide police, fire, sanitation. In our case, the jail, the public health system. You can't let us go under. And we didn't spend wildly for stupid things. We lost revenue because you shut the government, you shut the society down, and we had to spend money on the public health, on emergency service. You had to spend that money. You had to try to save lives. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, though, I think my plan was not accepted by the board and by the town supervisors. I think they made a mistake, but I'm not here to start politics.
No, I understand.
Think, we did doing the right thing.
George Latimer, County Executive here in Westchester, our guest. A thing that's come up in the last couple of days, we see it in New Jersey, where they're getting very stern. We see your colleague, who I have a lot of respect for, Ed Day, generally, wants the governor to tell him how strong he could be, and the governor's turning, well, you have all the authority you have in your position. What is your sensibility regarding enforcement, breaking up groups of people? Should there be, if someone if 10 people are attending a church service and they're all together and they shouldn't be, what is your view of that?
Well, I think Westchester County government, through Westchester County Police, and if we use parks personnel because it's a park, I think we have the ability to enforce that mandate, which came from the governor, that there should be no groups over 50 people congregating. Truth of the matter is, the scientists are telling us that social distancing is such as you shouldn't have 15 people together, all in a close quarter. In other words, don't play rugby, don't play touch football, don't have 5-on-5, half-court basketball. You're in too close a quarter with the other person, and you can spread the contagion. So I think if it's on a county park, or if it's in county owned land, which is pretty much the parkland. We also do the local policing for the village town of Mount Kisco. In those areas, the county police, I believe we have enough authority to go in, break it up without tickets, or give tickets. And in an extreme case, and only extreme case, would you arrest people who are willfully not obeying the order of a police officer, but basically to enforce social distancing. So I think we have the power to do it. Now, Ed Day's got a different problem in that what he's basically focused on is the ultra-Orthodox community in Rockland County. We have a small portion of that here in this county. He has a large portion of it. So does Orange County. Steve Newhouse is the county executive.
New Jersey as well, yes.
Right, and in New Jersey. And in those communities, because of their religious connections, they have a certain social structure to the way they operate, and they don't want to be told by American secular society, this is what you need to do. Of course, we're in the week, of Passover, so religion becomes a very big central focus for a lot of us. So, I can't speak because I don't go through that kind of an issue the way Ed does in Rockland County, and I know they struggle with it. It's a big political issue in Rockland County between the ultra-Orthodox and the rest of the county, and as everybody playing by the same rules, that's really what this comes down to. And the controversy between the county executive and the governor, it's not unusual. I have certain authority to do things. The governor has greater authority. And by the way, the president has the greatest authority of all. The president could step in and take away the governor's authority on certain things. He could either order a shutdown or he could eliminate a shutdown. The president's got tremendous national emergency powers if he so chooses to use them. But absent a governor doing something specific, then my perception is that I have the power to do those things where my power exists. And in Westchester County, it exists on county-owned land, which means the park system. So if we see a group of people at Kensico Dam or on Playland Boardwalk that are not practicing social distancing and they're together for any reason, I don't care if it's a social group, religious group, whatever it is, I believe we have the authority to go in and say, ladies and gentlemen, you must separate, you must break this up, I'm sorry, but right now we're under an order not to congregate and spread the disease. And at some point in time, I think most people have responded in Westchester, when that has been enforced.
Anything you'd like to shout out about yourself? Any other issue, whether it's administrative or regarding the virus? Please
I'll
feel
just say
free.
two other things quickly. Number one, aside from all of this on coronavirus, the Census 2020 is underway. We now started it on Thursday, April 1st, and while some people are waiting for somebody to knock on their door, that's not going to happen at this stage of the game. You can go online, my2020census.gov, G-O-V. I did it online. It won't even take you 10 minutes. Simple questions, not complicated. You go online. You can fill it out online. You'll get a form at the end that you can print out if you want to print it out, copy. That'll show that you completed the census. It's essential for every person who resides in the United States to have the census form filled out on behalf of their family unit. We've had about 30-some-odd% response so far in Westchester using electronic purposes. There'll be a mail going out shortly, and then at some point when the society opens up, then you'll have people going door to door. But let's not wait for that. You could do it today. If you haven't done it, Bob, if someone listening hasn't done it, my2020census.gov. You fill it out, it's done, and you've done your job. That's an important message.
Thank you for the reminder, because it's sitting on a table. I will take care of it. I promise,
Bob, go online, and then the next morning, you go online when you're off the air. It'll take you 10 minutes. The next day, come on the air and tell the world how easy it is.
Okay, I will. And thank you for that admonition. Anything else before we send you on your way? And please be safe. You're traveling around from city to city.
Well,
okay.
I know we're in extra innings here, but if you have the
No,
time,
I will. No, this is too important.
So over the last 3 weeks, you can't travel around the world. All the events that I go to, all that stuff has dead stopped. Okay, what I have done, many of the organizations, particularly the town boards, the village boards, and city councils, have now had meetings over Zoom, video, or verbal conference call situations. They're legitimate meetings of the council. And I have done 27 meetings over the last 2 weeks where I've sat in my office late at night and I've called into the Somers Town Board, the Harrison Town Board, and over the phone I've given them an update on coronavirus, and I've taken questions and answers. Tonight I have 5 such meetings on my agenda.
Wow.
I'm going to be calling into Tarrytown, Ardsley, Irvington, White Plains, and I think Cortland Town. And I don't have to get in the car and drive all over the county. Nobody expects you to do it in a time like this, but it's also safe. But what it does do is it shows the outreach between the county government and the local government. And I would say, immodestly, this has never been done like this before. You've never had this kind of a county-local government connection as you have it now.
Well, that's absolutely true. I want to thank you very much, County Executive. Again, please stay well, and thanks for the job that you're doing. A lot of people, and again, from all political stripes, call in and tell us that. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, it's nice to hear, Bob. You have a good day. Stay safe, you and everybody else listening.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Jake Schaefer's up next. We have a lot to catch up with him on. And, I forgot I didn't get a chance to have some fun with the county executive about his predecessor, but we do need to take a look at the weather. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And the top of the hour, it's 8 o'clock. It's 8:03. Is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Kahn. Plug in virtualreality.com and my friends at the Beachmont Tavern. Now remember, they're right over there across the street from my owner, next to the firehouse. From 11:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're that kind of a pub. They're allowed to stay open that late. You can pick up food. So it's 10 o'clock. You got up late because you're not working. You want a burger. You want chicken wings. You want any of the other delicious meals that they serve. You call them up. And when you go there, they've set it up where you don't have to really go all the way in. They'll have the bag sitting on the table for you. Of course, you got to pay. And I did that Friday. And there was my burger. It spoke to me from the bag. It came out of the bag. It spoke to me with the smothered and sauteed onions, a little ketchup. Now the guy put the tomato and lettuce there, which I ate separately, pretended it was a salad. And they gave me an extra helping of fries. Now, I shouldn't be eating the fries, right? But hey, with all this going on, who knows how long I'll be on the planet. So I smothered them in enough ketchup to drown a battleship. I had a wonderful time. So you want to call them up. Here's the phone number, 914-636-9533. That's 636-9533. All right, he's on the phone. He goes there to pick up food as well. And he is our man, Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Bob. I had wings from the Beachmont a few days ago.
Yes, you did.
Went and picked them up.
And don't you like the way they set it up?
Oh, it was perfect.
Yeah, I walked in and there it was. The bag spoke to me. I got an email from it. And I always tell you, it really is. I don't need all that stuff on my burger, Jake. I need just my burger, my ketchup, my sauteed onions. Now, I'm going to admit to something. A couple of times, I've gone in there and ordered 2 burgers.
And you had 2 in one sitting?
Oh, yeah, many times. But I've had to stop that because I've been on this very slow, practical diet for several months now. And I'm having trouble doing the last 10. I've lost 20. But the last 10, but again, now I'm back on. I lost a couple more. I guess I'm about 7 pounds under my normal playing weight, but as I get older, I need to be lighter. So I want to lose another 8 pounds. But nonetheless, as soon as I get there, I'm going to order 2 of those burgers again. But you see what I'll do when I do that? I won't get the fries. I'll get the salad.
Yeah, I like their sweet potato fries are very, very good.
Yeah, I don't like sweet potatoes, but I understand they're good. But so too is their regular French fries are good. But you ever get a salad there, by the way?
I've never have.
See, by the way,
I'm a creature of habit, so I usually just get the wings. I like the pretzel.
Oh,
and
the pretzel.
I should be trying. I should open up my. I should broaden my horizons.
No, I'm the same way you are. I don't like to experiment. But yeah, you go over to Rock and Raymond and you get that strange dish with an animal leg in it, and you like
the oxtail.
Yeah, the oxtail. Well, it looks like an animal leg to me when it's sitting in there in the water. But yeah, but I got to tell you, see, if folks, you can't see Jake, and when we update the website, we're going to get a picture of him in full form. He's as thin as a rail, and it kills me. So you go there and you eat wings and fries and don't care. But some of us need to mix in a salad, and my point about the salads is they're very fresh there.
Oh yeah,
very fresh, crisp. You chew on it; it's crunchy.
No, they have a beautiful setup for the pickup at Beachmont. It's very very responsible.
But again, I like the way the bag is waiting for you. By the way, I just saw my third person today. Only 3 people so far in 3 hours. What do you think of that?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So that's 3 people. Jake, there was a piece in the paper. And I don't know if you had a chance to see it or read it about how the scouts were worried about Mr. Syndergaard because he throws some pitches that were killing his arm that he doesn't need. Is this guy not too bright, or is he just another dumb athlete?
Well, I hate to say it, just by looking at him, I would give you an answer, but I can't.
Well, no, he looks cool with the long hair. He looks like Thor. He's got a great body. He's a good-looking guy, but something tells me that let's just say he's not splitting atoms in his basement on the weekend or anything like that.
No. Well, maybe he spent the weekend working on a vaccine. Who knows? What do we know?
I don't think so. And I don't mean to be. I love pitchers, as you know. But when they're telling you don't throw the 2-seamer, you don't have to throw a slider 98 miles an hour because it's going to tear your arm up. But he. Anyway.
He kind of looks like the kind of guy that does what he wants to do, and
which is his right. I mean, who am I to tell him? But did you see that photo of Aroldis Chapman?
No, I did not.
Sitting at a card game, he has his shoulders and his upper arms. He looked like a wrestler. And they were kind of intimating, is that natural? No, I don't think he's doing steroids. When you're making $20 million to throw 1 pitch a week, or whatever it is, 1 inning a week, you don't have to do that. But my God, the The guy, his show, he was like built like a monster.
Now, Bob, are you getting actual newspapers still?
Mm-hmm. Although I couldn't today, there were none available in any of the places I stopped. But yes, and the reason I still get actual newspapers to the extent that I can is it allows me to be the editor and not be subject to the idiots that put websites up. See, the problem isn't the editors of the newspapers. I mean, the New York Times has the best site, but the problem is that you got people who think that Crimea is a hand cream deciding what goes on the website. You know, maybe they just got out of college and they think that Afghanistan is an SUV and they don't have a freaking clue. And so they're feeding you what they think you want to read or what will get the most clicks. I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed.
I've just heard that the newspapers transmit this lovely disease very easily.
Thanks for letting me know that. Well, you know, we've been talking about this, and this is probably a good time to talk about it, Jake being a part of us. I think tomorrow will be the last show that I do here in the studio. I am just being crushed by family, friends, officials. The risk I'm taking is unwarranted. And I mean, we're still going to broadcast. We'll probably take a couple of days to do some things and make some decisions. But as you well know, one of my closest friends passed away this weekend, which absolutely pushed my family into freaking psycho gear. But rightfully so. I mean, I'm going to make people I know sick if I'm not more careful. So I'm going to have to figure that out.
Exactly.
But we'll all be still doing what we do. We just won't be here. Nobody's here anyway. I've seen three people today.
Yeah, it's a ghost town.
It is absolutely a ghost town. And I tend to be, because of things that have gone on in my own life, I tend to like trying to brave things. You know, someone's got to be out there doing it. But there's a thin line between being reckless and confident. And I think I may have abused it a little bit. So
I mean, we were I think in hindsight might have been a little silly, but I think maybe we had gotten it and just didn't know it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what being asymptomatic means. I don't know.
Well, I was tested. I have been tested, but that was 2 weeks ago, and I didn't have it. But you're right. You may well be carrying it, and you're already over it. You may have antibodies already.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. But I don't know. I can't wrap my head around. I'm not a doctor. I'm not even a smart person, so
yes,
I can't really wrap my head around it.
Yes, well, you're a smart and a creative person. The only time you showed that, by the way, do you remember, Andy Spano's a regular guest on the show? And I've got, the other day, and people needed the relief, and it was very funny. He started talking about, he's stuck in the house, so he's been experimenting making masks out of his wife's panties and bra. I mean, the guy's gone around the bend. So he actually posted on Facebook, Andy makes a mask. It is hysterical. He looks like he's wearing a jockstrap on his face, but he had his wife's going to kill him. I mean, she better not. He's dead because he was holding up her panties, to show how.
Oh, dear God.
And they weren't exactly tiny. And I'm saying, that is a good way to get. He can be a statistic and not from the virus.
Mrs. Spanos, I apologize for this.
No. He said it on the air the other day. On the air. He said he was thinking of making one out of a string bikini. And, I don't need to be fed that kind of red meat. I'm almost embarrassed at where I went with that. I've considered wearing string bikinis with no virus on my head. But it's just, my guest is Jake Schaefer, part of the program, calling in from home. He's our sports guy, which we'll get to. But, yeah, you and I we're at the very beginning of this, we're saying, oh, God, very few of us are going to die. Let's chill. But what I learned, and sadly, well, before that, but what I learned through what my friend went through, who I was in touch with literally, God bless his soul, a night before, as he went downhill, is that no one I ever knew from the flu in a period of less than 10 days went from healthy to dead. And I'm saying that harshly because this thing is a killer in ways we do not understand. This guy was, I can bet, probably in as good a shape as an Olympic athlete who was older.
Yeah.
No pre-existing condition. And we're hearing this again and again, and we don't know why. So now, how's that? Everybody's good by you? And is your wife still teaching? Is she teaching now? Is she over?
She is in the midst of teaching at this moment.
By the way, I want your folks listen, and I appreciate that. And they must be appalled at what's going on at some of the websites up where they live. Do you know that a lot of, let's just say, our friends on the right, the far right, not your average conservative, God no, but they are posting the most terrible things about the governor in New York because we want to use their unused ventilators. And it just speaks so ill of that region.
I know. Honestly, I've been trying to not read the news or watch any of the CNN, MSNBC. Just tried to take the weekend just to be an imbecile and bury my head. I did see.
You have a PhD in imbecility. Go ahead.
There you go. But I did see a map of cell phone usage and people, movements, and it was impressive seeing how the Northeast has really made it a point to stay at their, in home and not go out.
Except for me.
And but you don't see it all around the country. But I was very impressed about what the Northeast has done. They're taking it serious. Doesn't seem to be the case in a lot of other parts of the country, but that was a nice piece of news that I got to actually take a look at.
There has been some nice pieces of news, and we did some of them this morning. I think it was, I'm trying to remember, it may have been Mike Lupica, but one of the major sports writers wrote this weekend that, and it made sense to me on the face of it. He doesn't think that any of the sports should come back until there's a vaccine.
Yeah, I actually was talking about that, and it might make sense. Sports is, you miss it a ton, and I was forced to watch WrestleMania this weekend. And,
but I heard it was a total fix, though. Well, didn't they have Zonka? He hosted it, and he was the winner. I mean, good God.
Yeah, Gronkowski.
Yeah, good grief. I mean, the same people who watch professional wrestling, which is okay. Just do they know that it's fake?
I would assume so.
Okay, so
but
it's like
who
like the people that believe the things the president says. They know it's fake, but they don't care. It's sort of
I think it is a lot of Trump supporters and the WrestleMania demographics.
And he doesn't have to. Everybody knows he's in a tough spot. I mean, he doesn't have to say the things he says. I just don't know why he does. I even people that support him don't know why he does, but that's the way he is, I guess. Now, any other you last week, and we didn't get to it, and we spoke to Steve Callis a little bit. The NCAA issue, the National Football League issue. Where do you stand on these? Do you think we're just going to totally move to next season and start over? Do you think we're going to go right to September and then start everything over?
Well, I talked to my cousin who is a doctor, and he said he thinks things might be okay or not okay, but be better by Memorial Day, and then you might start to see some things going on. I think golf will be the first one to come back.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Because you can have golf with distance.
I think I'll go out golf's a wonderful game to play, but watching it, I think I'll go watch the grass grow in front of the radio station. Don't worry, you got golf back. That's God Almighty. Oh my goodness, it's a 8:18. Jake, anything else on your mind you want to shout out about before we go to the mayor of New Rochelle?
No, I got nothing for you. I'm just sitting here watching the walls.
Well, have you given them names yet?
I will work on that for you for tomorrow.
Why don't you do what Spano says? Whether he's you got to go on YouTube and go. Andy makes a mask. It's hysterical.
Are you actually wearing a mask? I
Not
cannot picture you wearing a mask.
Not in the studio, but when I go in stores now, yeah, mask and gloves.
And you know, I actually found a little grocery store in Harrison that has masks still.
Oh, well, you know what? If you go to grocery shopping, some people have really cool masks, giant masks. I mean, somebody's got, and all I have is a plain old blue mask and white gloves. Here's the problem with white gloves, and I won't say what I misplaced, but I misplaced something very important at a store the other day. You can't feel things, like you can't feel your driver's license, you can't feel the credit card, and it's very easy to lose these kinds of things when you go shopping.
And you have to, the masks pick up the germs, so you can only wear them once.
Right, and then
you have to
throw
throw
them
them
same
out.
thing with the gloves.
Yeah. And also, I found that if you use
I gotta go.
A T-shirt sleeve as a mask works. All right, Bob.
All right, I gotta go. The mayor's on the other line, but thank you. And in fact, I gotta let him know to call the other number. The mayor is trying to call in as we speak, and I'm gonna give him. I gonna give him the hotline the last time, but you know. Come on. Okay. This is easy. Please use 914-999-4006. Remember, folks, I'm working all by myself. Jake's home, so I got to do these things. So you're watching radio. Be done. This is normally what a producer would do or a board operator would do, but I am doing it. He's still calling on the other line. So, he may have seen it. All right. I don't. There it is. I love it when a plan comes together. It is 7:20. Actually, it just hit 7:21. And the mayor has been terrific. I gave him the wrong time. Then I gave him the wrong time a second time. Then I didn't give him the new number we're using today. But he is anything but perturbed with me, or so I hope. Mayor Noam Bramson, the mayor of New Rochelle, please welcome him now. Good morning,
Mr. For texts, which have enabled us to make this connection after all.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being patient with me, and also thank you for coming on. Straight to the top, things seem to be leveling off a bit here in New Rochelle, and a good job seems to have been done by all. And also, and I want to add one other thing, the folks up at Young Israel volunteering to give their plasma with the hopes that they can help develop a cure. A lot of nice things evolving. Talk about it, please.
Well, I would agree 100% with your second statement. The conduct of the congregants at Young Israel of New Rochelle has been really remarkable and inspiring from beginning to end. They were the part of our community that was most heavily impacted initially. Many positive cases, many more quarantined. And now as the folks who tested positive recover, they're in a position to donate blood for testing of antibodies, which could be used for a treatment for others. And so that's a wonderful example of how members of our community can face adversity in a way that is strong and resilient and responsible, and then do their best to assist others. In terms of the first half of what you said, that we're sort of, things are leveling off, I think the jury's still out on that. We have to be very cautious in how we interpret the data. The number of positive cases is still increasing in New Rochelle as it is elsewhere. And although New Rochelle accounts for a declining share of the positive cases in the region, which from our local parochial perspective is a good statistic, we know that the apex is still ahead, and we really need to keep up the physical distancing, which is so essential to mitigating the spread of the virus. So I want to caution against any kind of premature sense of celebration or conclusion to this. We're still very much in the thick of it and need to keep focused on the challenge before us.
Definitely we do, but I also, the closing of the ward, the cordoned off zone, that seems to have loosened things up a little bit in the North End as well.
Well, we hope. I mean, New Rochelle implemented physical distancing measures earlier than most communities. We did so at the guidance and direction of the state government. And again, there is some reason to believe that those early measures may have been effective in flattening the curve in New Rochelle a little bit earlier than in perhaps some other communities. But the data is it's early, it's not timely, it can be interpreted in multiple ways, and so I just think we have to, again, be quite cautious about reaching premature conclusions. We all want good news in the midst of one of the most difficult periods that our country has ever faced, and so there's a natural tendency to grab a hold of little data points and try to construct a story out of them. That's a positive story, and maybe that positive story will end up being true. I hope it will be, but we got to wait, and we need to keep up again our individual responsibility, staying home, keeping at least 6 feet away from others when we're in public spaces, acting responsibly, particularly with respect to the elderly and those who are vulnerable. Those are the steps that all of us can take in order to save lives.
Definitely. Now, Mayor, I'm sorry that I didn't ask you this earlier. I trust that your family is okay, and I know your mom pretty well from seeing her in the downtown. Is she okay?
Well, thank you for asking. I'm happy to say that, yes, we're doing all right. My mom, who had recovered from a bad fall and had been in a nursing home, is now back in her apartment with a full-time aide, and we feel very fortunate that she's made a significant recovery. Still has a little ways to go, but she's a tough lady.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
But it's difficult because ordinarily we'd be visiting her on a regular basis, and because of this situation, like a lot of other people with elderly parents, we have to stay clear because we don't want to inadvertently infect her. Because of course, if she contracts the disease, like anyone at that age, it's a potential threat to her life. The rest of my family, we're all doing okay. Like lots of other families, trying to adjust to the new normal of no school, disconnection from normal work routines. Disconnection from normal social engagement. We're trying to see the silver lining in it, as the governor reminds us to do, and being able to be together with family somewhat more than we would ordinarily. That's perhaps the benefit in all this. But I think, like everyone else, we're eager to get past this and get back to a more normal routine and a more normal life, but we recognize it's going to be a while before we get there.
My guest, of course, the mayor of New Rochelle, Noam Bramson. We're talking about the virus. Well, please pass along to your mom my regards. Again, very independent woman, folks. Always saw her in the stores in the downtown, and I did not know of her incident, and I hope she fares well, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Bob. I will pass that along.
And as we pass through 827, Mayor, I know you've been conducting council meetings virtually, which makes a lot of sense, but I'm sure you're concerned about certain things, such as taxes. There's nobody's parking here. In fact, I saw 3 people this morning at the train station. You've got probably taxes and sales tax portions that go to the city not coming in. How concerned are you about that?
Well, very concerned. Look, obviously, economic and fiscal issues are at a lower rank than public health concerns when we're worried about people dying. Dollars and cents are not significant by comparison, but there's no question that when we get through this, there's going to be a significant fiscal reckoning, not just New Rochelle, but every city, town, and village, every state, and the federal government for that matter. I think our budgets are probably in free fall. Sales tax will be decimated. Mortgage tax will be significantly reduced. Our expenses will not go down. In fact, may actually go up. And we know that many individuals and families within our community will be economically impacted because they've been unable to work or have lost their jobs or have had reduced income. And we hope that the federal stimulus that was already adopted and perhaps another round still to come will provide some measure of support for all of us as citizens and for the government as an institution. But it's hard to know whether that'll be sufficient to make us whole. So while I don't know the details yet, because it's way too early for anyone to know, I think it's safe to assume that the next budget cycle is going to be a very challenging one for us.
It certainly is. Mayor, there have been funds set aside for the states and the cities. Realistically, how much of that, I'm talking about federal monies now, how much of that do you expect to trickle down to municipalities?
Based on the most recent stimulus, very little.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In fact, the direct aid to municipalities was restricted only to communities with 500,000 or more population. So New Rochelle will get none of that. We will get an increase in our community development block grant and some other federal entitlement programs, but nowhere near what is required to make up for the lost revenue that we will experience as a result of the economic crash.
No.
Now, there is talk in Washington about another bill that may come forward, and I hope that that next round will have some assistance for municipalities like New Rochelle, but at this point we can hope, but we can't count on it.
We're talking with the mayor of New Rochelle, Noam Bramson, here on Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are a station at the train station, still here, although it's just me, the guard, and this one hero who just keeps cleaning up every day, Mayor.
Yeah, they say Metro North ridership is down, I think, 98%.
It's incredible.
Was the last statistic I heard, which is not surprising, and that's what
that's what we want people to do. Mayor, are you getting pressure, or do you, even if it's something that's implied, that as a city or county, for that matter, that you have to be more forgiving about mortgage payments or rather taxes and things of that nature and penalties?
Yes, and by the way, I get that. I mean, my goodness, people are hurting, and then for a huge tax bill, thousands of dollars to arrive in the mail, it feels like insult to injury. The April bill is a school district bill, and the school district's options were quite limited, and I think they ultimately concluded that a brief delay, which is the most that was available to them, would not be of much benefit for a public health crisis of much longer duration. As we look ahead to the June county tax bill, we will investigate whether it's possible to provide some extension or grace period. These are, I mean, it's enormously difficult choices because so many residents are hurting, and at the same time, the government institutions need to continue paying their bills. We need to keep paying our cops and our firefighters and our sanitation workers, and the school district needs to keep paying its teachers. So there are no good answers here, but I think we all have to be looking to how we can provide some form of relief and flexibility while still maintaining institutions that are essential for the safety and welfare of our city.
I'd like you to comment a little bit about, and I must say, at the risk of sounding like I am pandering to these people, I can honestly say, though, that I actually get calls and emails, and even some of my guests. I have a couple of Republican conservative guests, one a guy that ran for office, and he's a defense attorney here, and others. They are praising the work of George Latimer. And then we'll talk about the mayor. We'll talk about the governor. He really has done, as best we can see from this perch, a fine job.
Yeah, and forgive me, Bob, I'm going to have to get off in just
That's
a moment.
Okay, Mayor. I understand.
A morning conference call,
Sure.
Which I'm already late for. I would say George has been absolutely wonderful, as has the governor. You elect people in executive roles, not just for the good times, but maybe especially for the bad times, when they really need to step up and demonstrate competence and calm and focus. And we've been very, very well served at the county and state level by outstanding leadership. And I think I'm grateful that people seem to have put aside partisanship and are coming together, recognizing that this is a challenge that all of us have to confront as Americans, as citizens of Westchester, as citizens of New York. We're all in this together, and I think George and the governor have epitomized that approach.
Well, so have you, Mayor. I want to thank you for making the time. I know how busy you are, and I appreciate you working with me. You stay safe and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too, Bob.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Mayor Noam Bramson, just some news, folks, that has come out. Now, this is interesting. The image many might have of COVID-19, obviously, is an elderly person struggling to breathe, hooked up to a ventilator, and we know, all of us now, someone likely who've been through that, or someone with a high fever, bad cough, and shortness of breath. But what they're saying now is, yet the face of COVID could also be a teenager skateboarding down your street or a middle-aged couple taking a stroll in the park. The sum and substance of where I'm going here is that as many as 25% of people with the virus are asymptomatic and will remain so. Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said in an interview broadcast Tuesday on National Public Radio, those who get sick from COVID-19 may be capable of transmitting the virus for up to 48 hours before they have symptoms. Both groups help explain why the virus has spread so quickly. Now, it's unknown how many asymptomatic people there are, for that matter, how many people overall carry the virus. Case numbers that local and state health departments release daily only capture those who test positive. State guidelines prioritize testing for high-risk people, such as elderly people, healthcare workers, and those with certain underlying illnesses. Others, even with symptoms, say they have been rejected for testing. The public should assume anyone could be carrying the virus, and this is really the key. Anyone could be carrying the virus. Now, what I'm wondering about, and it doesn't say so in this piece, if someone is asymptomatic and they're carrying the virus forever, does that mean we can get it from them? And that, for example, if someone gets the virus and they get it and they get well, theoretically they're not contagious anymore. But is someone, and if there's a doctor listening, we'd love you to call, and I got to sneeze. Sorry about that. If a doctor's listening, I certainly would love, I'll get somebody on tomorrow to talk about that. But if someone is asymptomatic and has not yet had the disease, is it that they have antibodies, or are they in effect a carrier, typhoid Mary? I think that's a fair question. And I don't know that anyone is answering that. Now, there goes the phone, and maybe someone can tell us. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. It's Lorraine Carl. How are you?
Hi, Lorraine. How are you?
Okay. I just want to encourage my fellow citizens that do go to the grocery store or wherever they are to throw the gloves in the garbage pail and the masks instead of on the macadam at the parking lots, because it's disgusting.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know why they're doing that.
I don't know either.
Actually, we should encourage the stores, and if you're listening, put a garbage pail there, throw them off and put them there. Absolutely.
Well, they are. There are garbage pails all over the parking lot. I mean, you could do it if you want to, or bring them home. I mean, and put them in a plastic bag in your car.
Well, I throw them in the car, the seat next to me, and then I throw them out when I get home. But
okay.
So.
Also, I was wondering if anyone is going to be looking at these ventilators once we don't need them anymore. Are they going to be looked at to see if they're still working? Where will they be stored? Because we have so many now.
Yes, we do. I think they're going to learn their lesson to answer that. But continue, please.
No, I was wondering. I don't want to see some reporter going into the hospital and find them all shoved in a room someplace. It just doesn't make sense. And
Lorraine, you and I have both come from corporate America.
Yes.
It will depend on how well this issue is managed.
Right.
When crisis ends and bosses, and most bosses are not good at what they do. It's one thing that Harlan Ullman and I disagreed on very vehemently last week. Most bosses suck at what they do. They got the jobs for the wrong reasons. We don't place a great value on management skills.
Right.
So,
and middle management is too weak to challenge.
Oh, God. Middle management is the most important thing in this country, not done well.
Yes, I agree.
Petrified, looking for somebody else to make they want the corner office, but they don't want the decisions that go with it. Anyway, and the reason I stress that, folks, is unless someone is put in charge that knows how to run stuff, they're going to be pushed in corners, and the longer we go without the next outbreak, some of them are going to grow mold, some of them are going to get dusty, and others we're not going to be able to find. So your point is really a clarion call to do something right about them.
Now, we should be thinking about this now, because this will subside and it will end, but we'll still have all these respirators and the like, that still some of them will have to be used at some point for other illnesses. And the like,
You know what bothers me, though? Speaking of management, and the incompetence lies at every level. And the fact, and I have my opinion here, but I'm going to leave my opinion out for now. The fact that the president and the governors are arguing over whose responsibility it is one of the biggest administrative disgraces of my lifetime.
Right. Wow.
Nothing. And I said administrative, not political, although it is political. They better make up their minds, the states and the federal government, who is responsible to do these things and to what extent.
Right. But if there's ever an argument for trade schools,
Oh, God, yes, we
this
need
is
trade.
the time
Yeah.
for people to think about this so we don't have to depend on other countries to make the masks. But the Democrats have to respect the people in the trades and not call them illiterate
Yep.
and the like.
That's
okay.
well, yeah, and the Democrats also have to spend. Not everybody's going to go to college. Not everybody's going to be a whiz bang. And rather than push people through school who don't want to be there, if they can do a trade, they should move them to the trades or let them choose a trade.
Or even, excuse me. All
Go
right,
ahead. No. The trades are very underrated. You know how hard it is to be a good plumber, a good electrician, a good carpenter? These are wonderful skills and wonderful jobs.
Or even to work on an assembly line, believe it or not.
Hey, I'm ready to take it now after this ship sinks.
But the thing is, we even have to look at if a child does go to college and afterwards decides that they would rather go into a trade.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make them bad or,
No.
that they can't function. But, I think this is, I know, I like the things George Latimer said today, the encouraging words. And I also think some of our religious people are giving us encouraging words. But there is a lesson that we have to learn with
Go
all
ahead.
of this.
Say that. Go to it. Say it. What
No,
is it?
it is. I mean, there has to be a lesson that we can't have everything instantly in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Young people have to realize that they're responsible, or we have to make them responsible. And for some of these kids, it's going to be a shock that mommy and daddy might have lost their job and can't pay for college next year.
Yeah.
So are they going to get off their duff and try to find a little job, even if it's working at McDonald's, which is not a bad thing, and try to help be supportive of their family and themselves? I mean,
one of you bring up a very important split that's occurred in the country that is sad. The far right tends to look down on educated people as being nerds and propeller heads and elitists and all this. And the Democrats tend to look at these trades as beneath them, and that's got to stop. We were all, this was all homogenous. It needs to be, for lack of a better word, re-homogenized. That's one of the great things that growing up in the city did for people that is getting lost. We worked. I grew up with people that became doctors, professionals, stockbrokers, laborers, carpenters, plumbers, factory workers. It didn't matter.
Right.
No,
you're right. I mean, I come in contact with loads of scientists.
Yes,
that from where I work and all. And some of them you wonder, how did they get from point A to B? I mean, it's they're intelligent people. I'm not taking that away, but if they work in a lab, their social skills are so poor.
Oh, have you ever met a technologist? Do you know, when I was at Merrill Lynch, do you know what we used to call an outgoing programmer?
No.
That was someone who looked at your shoes when he was talking to you.
Yes, it's really sad. But then again, people don't talk to them either.
And we need them. I mean,
yes.
it's
force them to at least recognize. And see, I think that's what we're losing with all of this, that even when you go to the grocery store, you could be covered head to toe, but no one will look at you. No one will smile. No one will say, stay well. It's like we all have a plague, which I guess we do, but at least we have to connect in some way.
I have to admit, it's just my nature. When I go to the grocery store, I tell people if I like their mask, I say, that's a cool mask. I need one of those. I want one of. I mean, some people have gotten really creative. Now, did you listen to Andy Spano on the show last week? I want you to go on Facebook. He did really post it. Andy builds masks. His wife is going to kill him.
Oh, my God.
No, he was holding up several pair of her panties, saying, I tried this one. I like this guy. And they weren't exactly tiny. And I'm saying, you're going to die. The virus isn't going to get you. You're going to die. He cut up one of her bras, and then the
Oh, my
ultimate one
God.
that he made, I can only tell you, Lorraine, that it looked like a jock strap.
Oh my God! Well, they have a commercial on how the women invented the first sports bra. They took two jock straps to do it.
I didn't know. Jeez, I
Yes,
didn't,
it's
this is
so
killing me.
interesting. It is so interesting.
What do you mean they took two jock? Oh yeah, I could
Yes.
see that.
Yes, and that's how they made sports bras.
But I mean, his poor wife. I mean, he held up a bra.
I guess he has nothing to do. I mean,
No, that's what I told him. I sent him a text last night, and I said, "You really need to get help, talk to someone,
Yes.
or get out."
well, the early bird specials are probably no longer, right, unless you order them and take them in.
Well, no,
Florida.
I don't care if he goes for a walk, he gets medication, he does. I mean, I can't wait to talk to him later this week. I got to figure out a way to keep him on because I may take a couple of days off to relocate.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I realize that I've been very selfish and not deliberately coming here every day. And traveling around, it's probably not the smartest thing I did. You know, I have family and people
Right.
that love me, and I can't put them at risk. But at any rate, going back to Andrew, but you know what? People need what Andy's doing. Here's a guy who was an iconic figure here and a big politician all his life, trying to keep a normal life by having fun. And I really enjoyed his, when he told me last week that he was thinking of of testing out a string bikini.
Yeah, I never knew he had that kind of sense of humor because anytime I ever saw him, he was dressed to the nines, you know.
Oh, well, but since he's been on this show this
I
last few
know.
years, he's been, and I realize I kind of am going to hell. I kind of bring that out of him, but
Maybe. Well, it was a good thing you weren't in contact that way when he was county exec and stuff.
well, I always kid him about the night he lost because he almost got me killed. You remember when I was at WVOX and the news director? It's a wonderful station, by the way. Even though I compete with them now, I will not say anything competitively bad about them. And I was a news director, and the way we worked it was I would go out on that night on election night. I would go out to the hall where we projected the winner. So when he was projected to beat Mr. Astorino that night. So, and I had covered both of them extensively, got to know them really well. They were on every week, if you remember. And so I'm at Andy's headquarters, and the place became like a morgue as the numbers came in. And I already had my mic, it looks like this, folks. I already have my mic all set up on the lectern and everything else ready for his winning speech. And finally, I'm looking at the numbers. So I get one of his advance men, and I said, listen, I'm working alone. If he is going to concede, can you just give me 10 minutes notice? All right, okay, we will. And this is, you got to have friends to do this. And finally, guy comes out, shall forever be nameless, says, okay, Bob, in 10 minutes, he's coming out to concede. Astorino's going to win. I said, oh, shit. Excuse me. Oh, shoot. I grabbed this whole assembly, okay, pull the wires out of the recorder that I had and my mic, this whole thing. I throw it in the back of my car. I was up at Ride, and now I'm heading down 287 and then 95.
Oh, my
I
God.
have to get to White Plains. And it was a touch. I got to get there. So I get in the hall, and it's packed with people at the hotel in White Plains. I go, excuse me, pardon me. And now fortunately, Rob was in the business, so he knows what I'm going through. So just as Rob comes out with his family, I got the mic, and I put it right on the lectern as he comes out.
Oh, my.
I'm sweating bullets. My tie is open. So I always like to remind Andy what he put me through by losing. It's just,
And also, last week you were saying how frightened you were as a child about the Cuban crisis.
oh, God,
right?
I was petrified.
Now, how would you like growing up knowing the atom bomb might come
Well,
and
yeah.
having to be on your knees with your head against
Wait, go easy now.
against a wall,
Okay.
being told put your hands over your head because this is going to save you?
Oh, I did that. Like, yeah, I'm no spring chicken. I had to get under my desk and put my hands over my head. Oh, yeah, sure.
It was and I remember asking one of the nuns, but this is all going to fall on our head. Lorraine, be quiet. Do what you're told. I mean, How could they ever think this would save us? I don't know.
Well, it was, well, they really didn't know. They were still testing a lot of the nukes when you and I were children and Abraham Lincoln was president.
Yes.
And they were still testing a lot of them, and they didn't really appreciate the full effect of the destruction. Yeah, we'd all been dead anyway.
I know. I mean, it was amazing.
In fact, I think I told you the story how my mother was way too honest with me.
Yes.
Mom, are we going to go to war? A nuclear war? Yeah, I think so, son. God. Thanks a lot, Mom. Get over it. I went back to go play stickball with my friends. You think I was thinking about hitting the ball? I was wondering how I was going to incinerate, but.
Well, in those days, I went to Catholic elementary school and Catholic high school.
So did
but
I.
In elementary school, we had a picture of the Pope who was so stern-looking.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
I
you'd
know.
never want to be Catholic. And then the nuns had the Lennon sisters next to him because as a girl, you were supposed to emulate them because according to the nuns, they were all virgins and very good girls and religious and stuff. And if the nuns only knew.
Yeah, but they had no idea. Well, that was that old 1950s thing. In fact, I've always had great respect for the problems that we give Catholic women because you all start life, the minute you know a man, and I'm using "know" with quotes,
Yes.
You are now a second-class citizen. You're no longer a virgin. And so you start your married life, assuming you waited, Lorraine, and I'm not going to ask, you start your married life with one moral arm tied behind your back. Where this happened in the ancient religions, the Catholics, the Muslims, and then for all of us making fun of Muslim women who wear that stuff, our nuns did till 20 years ago.
Yes. Yes,
Our nuns were running around like that with those habits in the middle of... No wonder they were ornery sometimes. I got punched in the head by Sister Georgina Louise once.
I mean, in the middle of the summer when you think of it.
God bless them. Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Although, I got to know nuns really well. I was on the board of this wonderful, just one of the best things I ever did in my life. It's still there. In Jersey City, there's a place called the York Street Project where they get battered women and they give them, a place to live, day care for their kids, high school for the women, segue to jobs, protection for the kids. The only deal is you can't contact the guy that beat you.
Wow.
And it was all run by nuns. And those poor nuns, I was the only real secular person on their board. And there was a woman that ran it, and God bless her. Her name was Sister Ann Taylor, just like the store. And this woman could have been president of the United States. She was one of the best executives I ever met, and she had to put up with me. Because we'd be talking about fundraisers, and you ain't lived until you do a group of nuns. What about a topless kissing booth at the bazaar? No, Bob, we're not doing that. Well, why not? It raise money. No, Bob. But they had a great sense of humor about it, and they gave up a lot of themselves. They gave up a lot of regular life, and we're not seeing that much of that anymore. But
well, none of the young women are going into the nunnery, so to speak, and just think of all the free work. They were basically slaves.
Oh yeah.
That they taught schools, they ran hospitals, had orphanages at some point, and they never really got paid. I mean, the only promise was when you retire, you go to the old nuns' home. I mean, and somebody will take care of you. But I think that's why you don't see the hospitals that we used to have and the schools, because they just don't do that.
And that's why they could keep tuition at a reasonable level as well. I have to say, I got a wonderful education in Catholic school, and I went to a Catholic high school that was extremely, and I don't say progressive in the liberal sense, but progressive in the amount of authority they gave us if we used it as student governors, if we used it responsibly. It was better than college.
Well,
Bishop
I
Ford,
can't say that about my high school. I wanted to go to Nourishell High School, and my parents wouldn't let me. So,
well, that's because you wanted to be some floozy running around behind the school.
Maybe
on the left.
I wasn't even given a chance. So
but tell me, now when you got to Catholic school, where'd you go? Ursuline?
No, St. Gabe's.
Okay, did you roll up your your skirt like the other girls did?
Yes.
You.
Of course.
Real Lorraine,
We
shocked.
had girls from the Bronx and Mount Vernon coming to our school that were like celebrities to us.
Oh,
because
my.
they were really like great. They taught us so much.
What do you mean by great? Do you want to explain?
We had them on pedestals.
Well, yeah, well, that could be fun because of the angle. But no, I am grateful, and I don't like revealing this about myself, but I am grateful that I went to an all-boys high school. Absolutely grateful.
Well,
I would have dislocated my eyeballs. It's just, I couldn't, It's like, there was a point I actually wanted to be a priest until I saw a woman in jeans for the first time. It was,
wow. Well, one of the girls got accepted to Barnard. And that was like,
wow.
What a rebel.
It is 8:54, Charlie Lorraine call. Well, you know what I used to do? I used to volunteer in high school to be on the dance committee.
Oh.
But the reason is only if I could deliver the tickets.
Oh, I see.
Because I got to deliver the tickets to the girls' high school. Walking down the calls, I'm lucky I didn't dislocate my neck. It's just, I would not have been paying attention. Whereas you got all boys and
I know.
Just much easier.
We had it on the other end, all girls,
Much easier,
Yes.
I mean, I probably should have wore a Hannibal Lecter mask when I was walking down the hallways. It was horrible.
Well, stay safe. And
you too, my love. And my best to everybody. And please stay safe and don't go out shopping. And if you do, wear a mask.
Well, I think the grocery stores must be doing a wonderful business because it's the only place to go.
Yeah.
I mean, or that you're allowed to go to.
Now, do you have a designer mask?
No, I don't have a mask. I have to go to the doctor's tomorrow in the city, and I've asked the nurse if they would provide me with one.
Well, you don't have a mask?
No.
Well, wear a scarf or... I dare say wear one of your underwear. I want to put underwear on my head, but my nose came through the boys' thing. So
that's only if you pledge a fraternity.
But I don't know. I'm going to be shocked if Spano's still alive come Thursday because when he was holding up his wife's underwear, which you could
or a divorce.
No, yeah, but you could have covered a grill with those things in the backyard.
Maybe they weren't hers.
I hope not. I take care, Lorraine. I love
All right,
you.
you too.
Bye-bye. Take care, Lorraine. Call everybody. Yeah, I got to do the weather again. In a few minutes, we're going to talk with Bob Cox. See what's going on with that gentleman. Where was I? Oh, yes. It's time for our final weather of the day, and the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org, and it's 58 degrees. It's going to get up near 65 today. The sun is shining brightly. A beautiful day, sunny, and tonight partly cloudy, though the temperature getting down to 41. And tomorrow, sunshine followed by increasing clouds, getting up to 60, though the overnight low 42. Wednesday, mostly cloudy, scattered showers again. I'm so tired of reading that. The high will be 58 Wednesday. Now, Thursday, mostly cloudy, again, scattered showers. That means it's not going to be a big rain-a-thon, okay? And the high will be 57. And we'll take you out to Friday, windy with a mix of sun and clouds. The high will be 53 degrees. Welcome as we head into the 9 o'clock hour, and that hour is supported by Aging Issues Management. Remember, Joe Sorcelli, he is the chief executive there. Go on his website if you're trying to figure out how you're going to get through this crisis or post-crisis, how you're going to either invest your money or prepare for retirement. Aging Issues Management, they are the people to talk to. The law firm of Pena & Kahn. They are personal injury attorneys. They're in the Bronx and all over Westchester. They're located, in fact, in the Montefiore building in the Bronx. Pluginvirtualreality.com. Of course, they're right here. And our friends over at the Beachmont Tavern. Now, the cool thing about them, if you want their wings or their burgers or you want to pick up a drink, which you can now, they're open from 11:30 to 1 a.m. And here's the number to call if you want one of those wonderful burgers or chicken wings or boneless chickens. They never walk. You can call them at 636-9533, 914-636-9533. Just take a hit. You don't need the lettuce. You don't need the tomato or pickle. What you need is the sauteed onions, some ketchup, and maybe you want the regular bun or the pretzel bun. Either way, they're pretty good. Welcome to the 9 o'clock hour of mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station, which is a very empty, lonely place these days. We're locked in. We don't let anybody else in so that I won't infect anyone and they won't infect me. Just by way of giving you a little look into the future, we will be here tomorrow. But we probably will take a day or two hiatus. We will be relocating almost certainly to a remote location. And we will fill you in. But we'll be back on the air, the latest by Monday. And we will be broadcasting and continue to broadcast. But frankly, the acknowledgement that, just coming back and forth to the radio station, et cetera, I may be putting other people at risk, if not myself, and it just, we would say by absolute popular demand, we need to change how we're doing this, at least for a while. Now, Bob Cox is going to join us in a little while, but there's a very interesting story here about, have I already had the virus, and how would I know, and what should I do? And we're going to get to Mr. Cox in a minute. How would I know, and what should I do? And that is a really powerful question. And Dr. William Hillman, he's saying at this point we don't have a test to tell that. We're developing antibody tests. Again, the test to tell that is not there to check for a prior infection, but those aren't ready for clinical use yet. The only definitive way to know that you have had it is to get tested while you have it and have the test be positive. Now, the question, I don't know if Bob will know this, but the question that I want to ask is, what if you're asymptomatic and you've always had it? Are you considered over it? And this, Dr. Hillman tried to answer that one. It's actually quite a significant spectrum of symptoms, from people who are entirely asymptomatic and would have no idea that they have it, to people with very mild cold-like symptoms, running nose, congestion, sore throat, and then some people with more flu-like symptoms, high fevers, muscle aches, shortness of breath, and cough, all the way up to people with severe illness. And again, what we don't know is what percent of carriers are asymptomatic. And right now, it's as much as 25%. Now, are people who are asymptomatic also contagious? A significant portion who are totally asymptomatic are contagious for some portion of time. So that answers that question. We just don't know for how long, because we don't have that kind of testing available to screen for asymptomatic infections. When people are symptomatic, they're contagious. A day or two before they become symptomatic, they're likely contagious as well. A virus builds up and starts to shed. And I'm sorry, my button here. Up and starts to shed, and then after symptoms resolve, people can still be contagious for a couple of days. And sometimes there is evidence that even a couple of weeks after symptoms are resolved, some people are contagious. And now an issue's even come up for funeral parlors and the like. Are people contagious after they're gone? Now, the answer is that the virus does not live in a body that is no longer working, if you will, is no longer metabolizing. So the question is how much is perhaps still on their skin and how long does that take to go away? But right now, when people die of the coronavirus, they're literally double, and I don't mean this in any unkind way or hurt anybody's feelings, but they're double bagging them and then sending them to the funeral parlor. And the worst part of that is that the people who love them can't see them before they go and can't even be at the hospital when they die. All righty, enough about that open question. We're coming up on 8:04. We're going to go a minute early to our next guest. And I always start this, though, because it was a sincere thing. When we put this radio station together, he was one of the inspirations for it. And the first person we invited on as a regular long-form guest because of all the great journalism work that he does. His name is Bob Cox. You know him as the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, a news outlet considered the source since 2008. Please welcome Bob Cox. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. How are you?
Everybody here is fine. In good health. My wife and I got tested last week down at Glen Island because where she works had a employee who tested positive. We're fine. This was back in the first half of March. We still haven't gotten our results yet, but hopefully we'll get our results today.
And you also, I believe there's a website that you can go on to check it out. Well, I wish you the best with it. As you know,
well, we've been checking the website, Bob. They're just not posted there.
I see. As you know, and I'm only saying this for the sake of conversation at this point, I don't want to beat a dead horse. One of my closest friends passed away this weekend after, all I can say is a brief illness, no underlying conditions, strong as a horse, cardiovascularly in superior shape. No one knows why the virus got him the way it did. As a separate issue, it's downright interesting and scary. So it is what it is. And and a second friend is now been removed from a nursing home to a hospital, and I've not heard from him in days. So that's the way it is, Robert, in all our lives right now. It's an interesting time. What's at the top of your queue, and what do you know about the virus that you might want to share with us? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just switching over to some headphones here.
Yeah, go ahead.
As you know, now that I'm not down in the studio with you, I have to do all of my own audio technology myself. Not as good as you are, I guess. So
no, it sounds pretty good. You sound great. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, I guess I was thinking about the coverage over the weekend, and I was listening to some of your conversations earlier, and not to minimize the situation at all, and certainly, here at our house, we're taking every precaution, as it sounds like you are, and doing what we're told to do in terms of staying home, although my wife is going a little bit stir crazy at this point. I guess I would remind people of the nature of our profession as journalists, right?
Yes.
Which is we have a tendency historically to basically take events and project them in perpetuity into the future. In particular, we tend to do things like take 1 or 2 or 3 data points and then draw a straight line projecting ever-increasing problems. And I heard you talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, so I would throw a few words out at you that you will remember. Sputnik.
Yep.
The Cuban Missile Crisis. 3 Mile Island.
Yep.
Chernobyl. Okay. Just as an example.
Sure.
Another example I would take is 2005 hurricane season.
Oh, yes.
We had 3 Cat 5 hurricanes that actually made landfall in the United States: Katrina, Rita, and I want to say
Irene, I think, was
Wilma.
Pretty bad. Yeah, Wilma.
No, Wilma.
Okay.
So those 3 hit in 2005. I was actually there in Florida for Katrina when it passed through. In fact, I was there when it made landfall on the east coast of Florida, and I was there when it went out the west coast because I was in Miami, and then I was in Marco Island area at the time. And at the time, there was all this reporting that said that this is the new normal. Okay, we're going to see this, onslaught of Cat 5 hurricanes making landfall in the United States, and what happened in Katrina is going to be happening all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not to minimize what happened in Katrina or with Rita or with Wilma, but you want to tell me how many Cat 5 hurricanes made landfall after 2005?
I think maybe only one back in.
Four.
There were four. Okay.
Matthew, Irma, Michael, and Dorian.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that's, again, not to minimize that, but that's an example where if you go back and look at the reporting in 2005, 2006, what you heard from the media was the projections are for more hurricanes the next year and then increasing going forward. In fact, the number of hurricanes that happened the following year was down significantly, named storms and actual hurricanes, and also the ones that made landfall in the U.S., because obviously not all of them make landfall in the U.S. And, in the past 15 years, we've only had 4 Cat 5 hurricanes make landfall. Now, they're all terrible. I'm not minimizing that, but I just offer that as an example. With like 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Sputnik, the Cuban Missile Crisis, when that was happening and immediately thereafter, the media reports were all that this was the end of the world. Okay.
That's very
and
true.
In fact,
you know what I want you to throw in there, Bob, and I'm sure you're going to get to it. 9/11. I'm one of the few people that think it hurt us more than we like to admit. I think it made us a relatively timid country. But continue, please.
Well, I just would remind people that there's sort of I did a little research, and I looked at human psychology because, of course, even journalists are human. Some evidence to the contrary.
You have your fans that say you're not, but we'll move on. Robert, go ahead.
So I would say that all the data out there from the field of psychology, and I'm obviously not a psychologist, I'm just reporting what I read, is that people tend to be unrealistically optimistic about their future. Okay, they tend to believe that negative events are less likely to happen to them than to other people, whether it's cancer or being killed by a drunk driver or whatever it is. There's only one difference, and there were some studies about this, is that optimistic bias existed if the threat was sort of a potential threat, okay, theoretical. If it was not potential or incidental, if it wasn't familiar, okay, then it went the other direction, okay? So in Chernobyl, they found that many more people now projected that they would be suffering health consequences due to radiation. Okay. Well, if you're sitting in Oklahoma and Chernobyl blows up, you're really not likely to be impacted by that. Mm-hmm. But that's the way people work, and that's the way journalists work, and it's this herd mentality. So again, I'm not minimizing anything about what's going on right now, but part of what's going on right now is has to do with the idea that what we're experiencing today will be the case in perpetuity. Now, rationally and sort of intellectually, people say, no, I don't think that. I understand it's going to end. But, that's how you explain some of the stuff that we've seen in terms of hoarding things and some of the behavior that people have exhibited and a lot of what's in the media. Okay. So, it's terrible, some of the things we've heard reported out of some of the hospitals in New York City. But why is my mother in Arizona sitting there in a state of fear? Mm-hmm. Because of what's happening in Queens. Okay. Obviously, this thing can move around the country and stuff like that. But I would just say that when you have an incident like what's happening now, there's a psychological thing that has to do with how we project out events. And so just like in normal times, in normal circumstances, people are unrealistically optimistic. In situations like this, people become unrealistically pessimistic. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm sure people can argue that point if they want to, but, I think that there's this desire out there, especially in the media, to try to identify anything that's wrong or could perceived to be wrong or even theorized to be wrong. And then to make that somehow part of the story, whether it's what's happening with the president, with the governor, what's happening with other officials around the country. There's this like desire to leap on anything that says something to the effect of "you're the problem." Okay,
that's
that
very,
to me
very
has
true. That's very true.
So I would just caution people to not sit there and watch cable news all day because the cable news business is predicated on the idea that they're going to show you every disaster they possibly can. It's going to be forest fire porn, hurricane, tornado porn, weather porn, and now coronavirus porn. They're going to feed you what you want all day long. And my recommendation is people stay informed, but not that way. That they should stay informed by signing up for the alerts that are offered at the local, county, and state level. That's the best way to stay informed. You get periodic updates, you get the information that you need, and you're not sitting there with a bunch of people hyperventilating about what's going to happen next. Because if you watch most of those shows, and I do try not to now,
me too.
Mostly what they're talking about is what this person, who in many cases has no actual knowledge to bring to bear, thinks about what's going to happen later. Okay, and none of us knows what's going to happen later. All right, so there's really no benefit to speculating, and that's what most of these people are doing, as to what's going to happen a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. This is more about what's the immediate need, what do people need to do, and people are getting that information, right? They're getting information to stay home, to cover up, to do things to not spread the coronavirus. But this nonstop alarm bell ringing that happens in the media, I think it just needs to be placed in context, because I could have cited many other examples. I gave a few: hurricanes and stuff related to the Russians and nuclear stuff, where when it happens, that becomes all that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, and Bob, absolutely. It's almost like we freeze in time, and in microcosm, we do that during snowstorms. People are running out and they're getting milk and bread and everything else, and the thing lasts a day. They act like it's going to last for a month.
Yeah. So again, I just would offer that out there for people to understand something about at least what you and I do in the media, which is that, if it bleeds, it leads. Okay. So the media has no interest in not reporting anything that isn't going to be bad news, because that's what people want to hear about. Okay. That's why in this particular case, especially, I don't think it's helpful to be, have the TV running in the background 12, 14 hours a day, which some people are doing, or feeling the need to be constantly updated. And then also doing this whole thing, which I really don't like, which is this sort of moral indignation. I don't care about the governor of Georgia, and I don't care what's happening in Georgia. I don't live in Georgia. I've never even been to Georgia. Okay. But, there was this whole outrage because the governor said something stupid, okay, that he didn't realize about how the transmission could occur with asymptomatic people. Okay, that's not a good thing to say, but do we need like a 2-day news cycle about how horrible the governor is because he made that statement? I mean, how does that help anything? And it's over and over and over again with people trying to find any example anywhere of anybody who does something that isn't right, or says something that isn't right, or isn't what the consensus is. And I guess my best example was Peter Alexander from NBC in the White House briefing room with the president, where the president said that he was hearing that this anti-malarial drug might be effective, and that, if it was, that would be great, and, expressing some degree of optimism. The question he got from this reporter was, do you think that you're giving people false hope? And the president got very upset about that. And in fact, it got played on the media, but they actually cut out the part where that reporter asked that question, which is what the president was reacting to. And they basically stuck in a follow-up question that was sort of underneath the first question.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, but the media went crazy, not just because, oh, the president is talking about this anti-malarial drug, but because he was criticizing the press for questioning whether he was being unduly optimistic about this drug. So that was like a whole news cycle. All right. The next day, at his press conference, the governor of New York announced that he was ordering 70,000 vials of that same drug and would begin testing that drug that week. No media coverage of that. Okay. So this whole thing about gotcha, and we're going to get the governor of New York because or the mayor of New York City, or now they're going after the New York City health commissioner. You know, this whole thing, I mean, you know, please God, just stop. Just stop.
And people expect perfection from all of these people. You know, one of the things we've tried to say here is, you know, the president, the governor, these other people are in horrible. I mean, it's what they signed up for, but they're going to be making life and death decisions, and they're not going to be perfect decisions, and they're going to be based on the best data that they can get. And some of this stuff is even nitpicky. For example, to be very fair to the president, he's not saying that this thing is a cure-all, and he tends to talk like a salesman. But at the end of the day, he'll say, well, it can't hurt. And I don't see any problem with that. I just, you know, as long as people don't interpret it as a cure-all. But I don't think he's trying to say that. But then
you probably saw the infamous story about BuzzFeed, which the more I've looked at that, the more I stopped looking at it. I sound like Yogi Berra. But that's a horrible news outlet. I mean, it is horrible. And they put up so much crap on that website. I can't even believe it. That's why I said I'm reading it, and I'm stopping reading it because it's so horrible.
And they're agenda-driven. They're agenda-driven, Bob.
Well, whatever their agenda is, the story they put out that got picked up in the press was a couple in Arizona where the husband died because he ate fish tank cleaner that contained as one of the elements the hydrochloroxine or whatever it's called, anti-malarial, the same chemical used in the anti-malarial drug. But obviously it's a fish tank cleaner. And the story came out that
I saw
the wife said, oh, you know, we saw the president on TV and he said this was good to take, so we took it. Okay, well, what the story that ultimately came out was that the woman had psychological problems and they didn't take it. Okay, she put it into the guy's drink without telling him, and he drank it and died. Basically, she killed the guy, okay, and then tried to blame the president for it. But nobody knows really that story, that this was actually potentially a homicide by some, you know, deranged person. They were more than happy to say the president recommended this anti-malarial drug, and this old couple then drank it and they died. So the president's wrong. That drug doesn't work. And actually Trump is a murderer because he killed these elderly people. The wife did not die. You know, that's the kind of stuff that's going on. And that story is still circulating out there that, you know, you could die from the anti-malarial drug. Well, just think about how irresponsible that is, because first of all, that drug is already prescribed for things like lupus and like as an anti-malarial. So you're now telling people who take it for other reasons that is prescribed.
Okay, let's go someplace. I just want to hold on for a minute and put this in context. Again, that voice you hear is that of Bob Cox, the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. Now, knowing you, and again, I'm going to give you credit, but also spread it out to the rest of the media because of their constraints. You write long pieces and you write pieces about stories that have follow-up, sometimes as with the school system for years. We've added long-form interviews such as this for the very same reason. As you know, it comes at a price. It doesn't always get eyeballs. People lose patience with detail and minutia. What can the mainstream media do to put things in context. Like I know I waste a lot of breath putting things in context. For example, the small numbers of people who actually die, the likelihood of the average person dying, blah, blah, blah. But to do that, you have to cover the whole 100% of people affected and then get into, distill it down. What can the rest of the media do that has all this pressure to make money and grab eyeballs and get headlines, Bob?
Well, I suppose one thing is that the average journalist might tell you that they don't write the headlines for their stories. They don't typically assign themselves to a story, and they don't actually produce what you see in the newspaper, on the web, or on TV, because they may do the core original reporting, but then it's edited and it's altered. And I've run into this problem, in the past for myself, being misquoted or even being quoted in stories for which I was never even interviewed. And I'm not talking about BuzzFeed. I'm talking about places like the New York Times. So, I think fact checking obviously is important. Obviously being skeptical, there's a good book on H.L. Mencken, which
Yes.
I have started but haven't finished, called The Skeptic. He was a famous reporter
I know
back
it was.
100 years ago. When you were
Go
probably,
ahead.
middle age.
You know about my birthday last week, right?
I don't, but I'm afraid to think about that. Probably the fire department was called for the candles.
All right, I hit the big one, Robert, 7-0. Anyway, go ahead.
Oof, okay.
Yeah, that's what I
Well, while you're still with us, let me
and he wonders why
I just
people
say
want
that
to nuke his house.
the role of the journalist isn't to be an ideologue and not a Republican, a Democrat, a conservative, a liberal, a progressive. It's to be a skeptic. I mean, that's what I think drives people crazy, mostly about me, okay, which is I don't believe anybody, ever, about anything.
Well, what's that old line? If your mother tells you something that you're her son, check it twice.
Well,
it's the old act.
So I would just say that it's funny because sometimes I write stories that people like, okay, and they're surprised. I'll give you an example, okay. I just published a story over the weekend about the stabilization project at the New Rochelle Armory.
I was going to ask you about that. I like that story. You sent it to me this morning.
Oh, I mean, a lot of people in the city government, contacted me and indicated that they liked the story.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were kind of like surprised. And I said, well, it shouldn't be a surprise because if you're doing a good job, I'm going to say so.
Mm-hmm.
And I, mentioned to one city official, I hope the fact that I throw around compliments like manhole covers suggests that I, actually like what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can you have credibility in anything for anybody, but as a journalist, if all you ever do is pat people on the back and give them attaboy, tell them they're doing a great job, but also how can you have credibility if all you do is criticize and attack? Okay, you have to actually call them like you see them. You have to be a fair,
almost like a ref
umpire.
or an umpire. Yes, my thinking.
Yeah,
exactly.
You have to be fair. You have to call balls and strikes like you see them. So in the case of what happened with the Armory, and I would certainly encourage people to go to Talk with Sound and look at that article. We got in and I went there with Jen Parente, who's an excellent photographer, and she took some beautiful photographs of the space. It's not finished. It wasn't a rehab project. It was a stabilization project, mostly paid for by the state government through some grants, but also with a commitment for, I think, a little over $1 million from the developer down there, Twinings. But they basically ripped everything out of the drill hall space, and then they scraped down all the rust on the steel frame of the roof, and then they painted it black, and then they put in all these this wood on top for the roof, and it's gorgeous. It looks like being inside of a barrel stave. There's still graffiti on the wall. The other part of the building still needs to be cleaned up and repaired in some places. But what I thought was cool about it, and this is sort of the benefit of this, is that as a potential investor or a potential tenant for that building, boy, you can really see what the potential is now. And this was undertaken, through the Department of Development. So, and I'll give credit to Suzanne Ryder because she's the project manager who's in charge of this project. Sure, going to make it a lot easier, to get people interested in this building when they can see. And so there are some before photographs in there too. And believe it or not, I mean, many people remember that the Chamber of Commerce used to run a haunted house there.
Yes.
Okay.
You were a major star at the haunted house, the Bob Cox.
To be honest with you,
I owed you that.
Did I not go there? Although it would have been probably a big draw.
It would have,
especially for school and city officials to come around a corner and see me there with a typewriter.
It would have been wonderful. I'm kind of glad I lied in wake like a snake and attacked. Go ahead, Robert.
I actually had never been in the building until this tour that we took a few weeks ago, and so I was really excited and blown away. But what people may not have realized is that whole haunted house setup, which was falling apart.
It was terrible, actually, at the end.
But it was all still there.
Yeah.
All the fake walls and all the plywood and was all still there. There was for some reason an abandoned car in there. There was so much junk in there. They cleared all that out. They ripped out flooring. They took it all the way down to the concrete subfloor. So like I said, there's pictures of it on Talk of the Sound. People can go look for themselves and see it. The other side of the building has got a lot of graffiti and peeling paint and things, but structurally it seems, as a layperson, seems sound. It's not falling down or anything like that. And it is an armory. It was built to last. So I think it was exciting. And, I would tell my friends in City Hall, you shouldn't be surprised if I like something, I'm going to say so. I'm not going to try to find something wrong with it just for the sake of something wrong with it. I thought it was really good.
Well, I've got some follow-up questions for you on that. Again, Bob Cox, our guest, Talk of the Sound. As you know, perhaps better than everyone from your stories over the years, this is my take. I get the feeling that there still will be people who will not be happy with your story because they are not controlling it or that it isn't what they wanted. And have you gotten complaints yet?
Well, the only people I think I would expect to hear complaints from are the people who are, involved. I'm expecting people involved with the veterans group that are suing the city right now. A lawsuit, by the way, that is so stupid that we didn't even report on it. That for starters, you'd have to have standing to file a lawsuit. So that's going to be thrown out. But the whole predicate for the lawsuit is that the city's not maintaining the building. They filed it knowing that the city had already received the funding to rehab or stabilize. Sorry, I shouldn't say rehab, stabilize the building and redo the roof, which was the main part of their complaint. So the whole thing's stupid. It's going to be dismissed. It's a waste of everybody's time.
Why on there? But why should? I mean, I suppose I need to ask them. And I used to have some of the people on with their plans, Ron Tochi, et cetera. But why should they persist now that it looks like a solution that even might be to their liking is on the table because it's not theirs?
Well, I mean, you'd have to invite Ron back on the show and ask him.
I certainly will.
I mean, I can't speak to that. I think that, let's put it this way. You can't possibly look at the work that's been done and sit there and say, oh, this is terrible.
I know. That's my point.
What would you say? I don't like what color they painted the steel. It should have been blue, not black. I don't like, I mean, what would you not like? I mean, they're making an effort to stabilize the building. By the way, they're also been tearing down stuff, in the area as part of the broader project. So that whole Nelstad concrete, cement factory, that's all ripped down now. Everything down back there is being ripped down. Other parts of what's on the property of the armory is going to be ripped down. Not the armory building itself, but there's like a storage shed. That's all going to be ripped down. And when you take away all that crap, it's going to make it that much easier for a possible tenant or investor to come in and want to do something with that. Now, that tenant or investor could be the veterans. Okay. So, yes, they should be excited about the opportunity to have the building actually put back into somewhat better shape. It's certainly now being stabilized. Okay. The complaints about the roof have gone away because there's a roof, right? But again, you'd have to ask them. I think that, let's put it this way, if they're complaining about what's been done here, then you'd really have to question their agenda, because it's not actually saving the armory. It's more like wanting to control what happens with the armory. And right now that's not going to happen, because the state and Twinings, the developer, put up a couple $1 million to do a bunch of work. Now there's more that needs to be spent, that's for sure. But, my view of these kind of things is that it's a lot easier when you get grants to get follow-on grants from places like the state than it is to get the first one.
Yes.
So the fact that there's now been this money put into the building, creates opportunities to do additional
That's
work
correct.
in the building. So anyway, all that aside, I just thought it was, really interesting to see inside. That's why I wanted to bring a photographer with me, because I really wanted to share what was going on in there with the public who, can't just walk in there right now. Now, the one thing I did talk about with the city was, when the day comes that you're going to unveil what you did here, okay, I would expect there's an awful lot of people in this community who want to go see it. So I hope you're not going to just do an event that's like for the press. And the developers.
That's so true.
I think that you should have an open house. I think you should, make it a bit of a party, serve lemonade and cookies. I mean, let everybody who wants to come in and see it. Because I think once they do see it, and I'm talking about the drill hall, I think that they're going to be very pleasantly surprised if they haven't seen what's going on. And so I did ask about that, because of the plan was to do this in April. The work is basically done. I think they're just awaiting a final inspection from the city building department, which can happen relatively soon. Quite frankly, how much is there to inspect? You're like, is the roof going to fall in? No. So I expect that'll happen, but there won't be any, grand unveiling of this work as planned in April, because obviously where we're at with the coronavirus. But tentatively, they're hoping to do something over the summer, and maybe July 4th would be a nice time to do that. That weekend. So
that actually would be a great time to do that. Hey, Bob, while I have a moment and we have some time, it's 9:38. Bob Cox, our guest. We're talking about the Armory. Please feel free to give a plug for Jennifer. She is a great photographer, and when I was doing TV 10 years ago or so, she took a couple of photos of me that I was able to use forever because of her work. Give her a little plug about Jen Perez.
Well, if she managed to get a good photo of you, that's the highest.
That says it
highest
all.
Compliment.
I hate you. I hate you.
So that is a high mark.
Does she have a website?
Jen Parenti, Google Jen Parenti photography. I don't know, but no, so I wanted pictures of the vaulted barrel ceiling and all that kind of stuff. But actually, some of my favorite photos are the ones she took that were more artistic, that were like close-ups of the peeling paint or through a broken window.
Yep.
So there's some, I guess, sort of documentary photos in there. Okay, that is what I wanted, just to show the public, hey, this is what's happening here. But there's some actually just beautiful photos in there that are, really frameable. I mean, they're really beautiful.
Yeah, she's
photos.
terrific.
But the best one she took is where you can see the whole. You're basically looking from the door as you enter in the back of the armory, and you can see in front of you the whole floor now cleaned out, just down to the concrete. Remember, people don't know, but it's like it was all buckled and ruined. Okay, all that stripped away, all of the haunted house stuff. There's no car there. There's no garbage there.
Bob, I'm just thinking, you're right. She has a gift. In my entire life, the two best non-posed photographs ever taken of me were taken by her. She's
Oh, there you go.
she's St. Jude. She's the
There you
St.
go.
Jude of photography. No, when I was
What does St. Jude do? Is St. Jude the patron
hopeless
saint of lost
cases,
causes?
hopeless
Okay, there you
cases.
go. There you go.
Anyway,
Anyway, so
continue.
that
Yeah.
photo,
Thanks for
the
that.
photo that's at the photo that's at the top of the story is
Yeah.
is what I just described. That you can
Yes.
see the concrete, and then above it you can see the roof, and that's both a beautiful photo and a good documentary photo, because that actually tells you in one photo everything you need to know about the work that was done. So, like I said, if you're listening, and many people in this community have had a long-held interest in the armory, and you want a chance to get a look inside before the unveiling, hopefully this summer, this is an opportunity to do that. And there's a slideshow at the bottom with about 40 photos, and there's 37 photos there. So even the photos that are not in the story, there's a fuller set at the bottom. So certainly make sure to, if you're interested, to look at the slideshow at the very bottom of the article.
What do you imagine the armory will become? I mean, I realize they've created it where there are different possibilities and variables. What's your sense? What would you like to see it be as someone who's covered this story all these years?
I don't think that's necessarily the right way to think about it. The way I think that they're going about it is right. There's a sign in front of the building, and it says who to contact about, leasing this space. Okay. And, they need a tenant. Okay. Now that tenant could be a commercial tenant. It could be some kind of retail tenant. It could be for housing. The drill deck area, the drill hall, is like a big, like gymnasium type place, right? I mean, that's what it was for. The other side of the building, which is really a distinct kind of separate, is really like offices / bedrooms.
Yes.
I don't know what exactly they were used over the last 80 or 90 years, but probably different things. But
will they be
a bunch of rooms?
Will they be providing? Sorry to interrupt. Will they be providing parking? Will they have parking in the back? Do you think? Because if it's going to be some sort of an arena, they'll need to have parking.
Well, I didn't say anything about an arena.
No, I did. No, but where people are going to use that big floor.
Well, there is parking there, but also they explained to me on the tour that the parking that's there is not going to be distinct from the adjacent property, which is currently the city yard. That'll all be one contiguous property, so they can have parking on all of that property as needed. But also there's a couple of structures, and one's quite large, that are actually newer. They're not part of the original armory. Those are definitely being torn down, and that will definitely free up space if they need more parking. So I think the only dilemma you have is that getting in and out of there on the current road, it's like a single lane, is probably 10 or 12 feet wide. So, but remember, as I said, they're going to open up that whole property, so you're not going to be limited to just what is on the current armory parcel. But they'll get that sorted out. Obviously, you can't, rent out a space that doesn't have the corresponding zoning requirements for parking, so they'll have to get that sorted out. What I'm more interested in is, I think there's a better way to do it, which is that you make the building something people would want to lease, and then you offer it through real estate brokers, and let the investors, the developers, the commercial businesses, the retail stores, let them figure it out. I mean, it's not the job of New Rochelle to go find a tenant. Let Twinings do that. I mean, that's the business that they're in. Okay. The city certainly would want to have a say in that. So they don't probably want to put up, a strip club or something like that.
Why not?
But, well, it'd be the biggest one in town, that's for sure. But they want to have some say in it. But I think what's important about what's happened with the drill hall anyway is that if they bring people in to look at the space who are interested, like, whatever it is, a retail store, a commercial business, potential housing, they can now really see what they would be getting. They can have a much better way to visualize what's there. And I think you're going to get a lot more interest because of this, even though this project wasn't meant to be a rehabilitation. It's only covering part of the building. It's really about stabilizing the roof and kind of doing demolition to get rid of all the crap that was on the floor. I think that it lets your imagination kind of run with it. And, I could sit here and rattle off a bunch of ideas, but I mean, that's kind of silly because there's an infinite number of potential uses.
Very much so.
And why would you ever want to limit it to any one thing? I just think that there's going to be people who are going to find this space extremely interesting. I'll tell you one place that I did like is if they were to make it somehow residential, they have one area of the building, so the building that has all the little rooms in it is basically a basement and 2 floors on top of it. But above that, there's like a little tower. There's a flagpole on the top. You can see it from the street. And there are pictures of this. So that is to get into it, you go up a flight of stairs off the hallway between the two parts of the building. And then you end up in this sort of 2 rooms, basically, but the walls are all knocked out. So one big space. And then in the middle of it, there's a metal spiral staircase that goes up to the roof. And there's a little area up there. I would be very interested to rent that as an apartment if they ever made that as a commercial, as a rental space for housing, because that would be one of the coolest apartments in Westchester County.
I've always thought that way about here at the train station. It'd be nice to have an apartment upstairs.
Well, maybe, but I don't want to listen to the trains go by. Here, I'd have the gentle lapping breeze of
gentle
the sound.
lap. Well, let me ask you something. How far back? Because you go to Five Islands Park and other places, and I know our shore is not a straight line. How far back behind the Armory is the shore? Is the sound? How far back?
Well, I didn't measure it, but I mean, it's
roughly.
less than 100 yards.
Well,
I mean,
that's
I don't
pretty
know,
cool.
50 yards, 80 yards. It's curved, so
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
don't know
cool.
exactly. But it's the property itself is on the water. But I just thought there's a picture of it inside, and then there's the roof. See, if I lived there, I'd want to put up a deck and have deck chairs and be able to look out on the water from the roof, and then go back downstairs. It's a really cool space, and so a lot could be done with that if it was housing. But I mean, it could be office space. It could be, who knows? I mean, whatever. And then the drill deck is a whole separate animal. I mean, they're really kind of 2 distinct things. So it's kind of hard to think of maybe one tenant taking the whole thing. But I just think it's a really fabulous, interesting space. And, to credit, because I said something about Ron and the veterans and things like that. I mean, I think it's fair to say that without their pressure
absolutely.
over the years, that the motivation to actually do this work wouldn't have happened. So I guess that's what I would say I would hope would happen is that those people that were involved all those years in pushing for saving the Armory.
Yeah, it was not in vain. It was not.
But I would recognize that this
absolutely
is actually their victory.
Yeah.
Is what we're seeing here. I didn't really get into that too much. I was just looking at the building itself.
No, but I understand that. I used to feel that way about Obamacare as fractured as it was, that had, or if ever the Republicans do come along and do something better, and I understand that's all arguable, that big push then will always have been a part of it. So but going back to the Armory, you're absolutely right.
Well, I think you probably lost a lot of listeners by linking Obamacare to the Save Our Armory effort.
Because you know why, and that is one of the problems in the country today, because people had different agendas, but the dynamic's absolutely the same. And the people wanted to save the Armory, and I'm glad they did, and I hope they accept that. I really do.
Well, I think that recognizing the connection is important, and maybe that's something I need to somehow address, because my story isn't about that. I didn't want to get into the lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. But somewhere down the road, maybe something a little bit more about that. But I think, maybe you should have Ron come on, because he's been the spearhead behind that, from day one, going back to the 80s when the city bought the property for $1. So, so let me just say that I had one other story this week that I thought was interesting, and I might want to mention it here.
Please do.
But since we may run up against the time, I'll throw a few things in here. One is I got word that there's going to be a teachers' parade in New Rochelle tomorrow, setting off from
Wait a
Barnard
minute.
School.
Back up. A parade when we're supposed to be social distancing? It's going to be a long parade.
So there's going to be a teachers' parade. It's kicking off at 11 a.m. Tuesday from Barnard School. The idea is that the teachers are going to and staff are going to decorate their cars, and they're going to drive through neighborhoods, and they're going to wave to their students and let them know that they miss them and that they're supporting them. And then they're going to also do a drive-by at the hospital, Montefiore New Rochelle Hospital, to thank the nurses and doctors and other staff over there. So I will probably get in my car and follow along as best I can, and be posting some pictures from it as we go. But the idea is to do it in a way that's safe.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
That's pretty nice, actually. And don't worry about the clock, Bob. I get to manage it here. I know the GM really well. Go ahead.
Good. So you and I have discussed my doing a show and podcast.
Yes.
So one of the things I've been doing this past month was working on doing a podcast based on these interviews. So this is a little self-referential here because this conversation will be in one of the podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea was to take excerpts from these shows that we're doing
Mm-hmm.
and sort of wrap it around with me introducing it and saying that you and I are going to talk about topics. And so the first one I did was about the Apex story that I did,
Mm-hmm.
about the investigation that was done. That was back on March 9th. So the way it works is it takes a little while. So we actually uploaded. I have an in-house sound engineer, as you know.
No, you have Colin, who is he's terrific. I can't wait to get him involved.
By the way, just Collins.
Collins, I forgot. Yes, Collins. I said Collins. Forgive me.
Just so you know, he's named after Michael Collins, the Irish Patriot. So
that's great. All right, thank you.
But in any case, so he put this together, and the idea is you have to upload one in order for the companies who host who have the directories like Apple and SoundCloud and all those companies. They have to see one first, and then it takes a couple of weeks to get approved. So we're going to put up like 4 of these to kind of be a test case, and then we'll start actively promoting it once we've got a few. Yeah. And then the other podcast, which I would do, is a completely original show, which we talked about, Words and Edgewise. And so as soon as we can, be back to setting up something.
If I may, if I may, on your behalf, and I think we've done it in a few of the interviews where when Bob comes on and I know we have a little extra time, I go down certain paths with him. And I remembered from our original interview, our first long-form interview on this radio station, please, it's going to kill me to give this man a compliment after the age jokes, but I have to. There is so much more to you, to Bob Cox's background, his education, his experiences, the kinds of things he likes, from opera to Notre Dame football, which he's depressed about, that I can't wait for that show. There's a whole nother side to you that I think people are going to get to know. And your wealth of knowledge, a lot, and the thing I think that I've always appreciated about you is you're not a one-dimensional guy. You're not just someone, and not that that would be a bad thing, who's an investigative journalist, and that's all you think about. There's a lot more to you, and I think that people will see that when your show comes on, Bob.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I'm so glad I didn't make any height jokes because
no, you could have. I'm used to it. Everybody does it, and plus, I got even when you mentioned the Funhouse. I had a stride. Imagine it would have been great to have you behind a desk with one of those hats on, a pencil in your. Oh my God! It is a horror show.
Well, we'll get that going, but there's. For that show too, the idea would be to do like 4 episodes.
Oh, sure.
They'll be posted, whatever. But I won't be actively. I mean, you can listen to them, but they're, the first few shows are I've done this before, right? It's like hitting your stride.
Yeah, and they're
You know,
like pilots. Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
what we're producing month one will not be hopefully what we're producing in month six. But yeah, the other show, Words and Edgewise, is definitely not about me. It's me interviewing
Yes.
people who do stuff that I find interesting, but nothing specifically about New Rochelle, although I will certainly be interested to interview people either who live here or from here, but not because they're doing stuff like in the schools or in city hall politics or something like that, but more because they're doing something interesting professionally. Or have done something interesting, whether they've written a book or you know they are a musician or an actor or you know whatever it is. I mean, they can be from here, but I'm also interested in talking about people who do what I do, hyperlocal journalism around the country. I know a number of people in California, and,
Wonderful.
you know, down south and out in the Midwest that do what I do and how they do what they do. Again, book authors, technology.
Quite frankly, I'm even going to ask you when my book finally comes out in book form, which has been delayed because of the start of this radio station. You know, my serialized book comes out in book form. I'm going to ask you to interview me if you consider it a worthy subject.
We're getting the schedule. I have to talk to the general manager.
Would you talk to that guy and also talk to the engineer? Tell him to push you a little harder on this, please.
I'll do that.
Collins,
So,
I need your help. I'm
right.
looking
Well,
forward to your show.
He's probably not listening now live, but he's going to be listening on the tape because he's going to be cutting the audio file. So he'll hear you. He'll get the message.
Can I shout out to your wife, who is getting, of course, a little stark crazy there? She is in the house with Bob Cox, folks. I want to imagine yourself locked in a wonderful apartment, though it may be, with the
Well,
manager.
it's funny because, you know, back before September 1, we were living in a 6-bedroom house with a backyard and had a TV out in the garage, and I could sit out there and watch Yankee games, and basically we could go our separate ways.
And you could
as
smoke
needed.
your cigars.
Yeah, not anymore.
Right.
So we're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and yeah, it's a little close. But the bad news for her is that she had this, you know, huge stamp collection that she was working on. I'm not huge, but I mean, it's very time consuming because you're talking about one little teeny stamp with the tweezers and putting in a little plastic sheet. And in any case, the bad news is, I mean, the good news is that she's nearly organized the whole thing. The bad news is she's nearly organized the whole thing because I don't know what she's going to do in the next day or two when she's actually finally finished and everything's nicely, neatly organized in these little binders, because she could look at it, but then it'll be like, all right, now what do I do? So, but I will say that, you know, by April 30th, when this current pause ends, and hopefully that'll be the end of it, we'll have the most organized house in New Rochelle. Every stamp will be in a binder. Everything in every cabinet is only there because it belongs there. The refrigerator is immaculate. There's nothing in the freezer that's left over from a year ago. There's just very organized. So, you know, maybe we should do this every year. Just have a 2-week pause and everybody stay home and just organize things. You got to look for the silver lining somewhere, and probably the only place I can find it right now is our house is really organized, and I hope other people are taking advantage. So I'll mention also real quick before I get to this last thing, which is a funny thing, which is I was sent a video by a mutual friend of ours who I don't think he'd care if I named him, but I won't unless he tells me I can. But it was just a simple video of a bunch of people standing in line up at the Costco in Portchester. And, this video, just totally exploded. You know, typically I might get, if I put up a video, 500 people, 1,000 people, 1,500 people might watch it in the first day or so. Over time, there might be many more because the video stays up for a long time, actually forever. But this thing did 2,000 in like 40 minutes. And I was like, wow, we got to keep an eye on this. Well, right now, last I checked, it was like 12,000 over like a 36-hour period. It's probably going to go to 100,000 over time. And people are really reacting to it. I mean, a lot of comments, a lot of shares. And, people are like, either that's terrible or what are those people doing? but there's something that is very unusual with this particular video of just people standing in line that is really setting people off. I can't explain it, did not expect it at all, but if you haven't seen this video, go to Facebook. It's posted there. You can watch it. And then probably you'll have a reaction because everybody else seems to have a reaction, and to be curious as to what people have to say.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so now the bad news.
Go ahead. I'm ready.
All right. So on the last day of the containment zone, and I did a big whole story about that, and I interviewed Noam, and I had a question to Latimer at his press conference that day, and I wrote that all up. At the last day of the containment zone, which was March 25th, it actually ended the next day, we stood at 284 cases. As of Sunday, according to the county, that was at 609. And that's really interesting because nursing homes are no longer testing as of March 21st, which you may know about. So the big question is, where is this coming from? Now, I will also tell you that I did ask the city about the firehouse that's right near my apartment. I can see it out my window right now as I speak, which is Firehouse Number 1 on Harrison Street. And we have noticed that they have been going out on calls all day, every day, throughout the day in a way that we do not see or hear. So it got me wondering, are they really seeing an increase, and what is causing the increase? And obviously, is it related to coronavirus? So far, I have confirmation from the city that there is an increase, but I haven't got the details yet from the fire chief as to what's causing the increase. But I think it's fair to say that it is very likely, paramedic calls going out to people that need to be moved to the hospital. So we'll get more on that. And that kind of leads me to the last story I published, which is, I did this whole assessment of the school's food distribution operation here in New Rochelle, and found it, just quite frankly, outright dangerous. That basically what they had set up, as I said, was the perfect delivery vehicle for mass exposure to the coronavirus. No effort made at social distancing, nobody wearing masks, crowding people into small areas, and creating scenarios for them to actually linger and hang around and then let more and more people accumulate and start to gather around these different points. No testing of anybody was going on. And I specifically warned and said that the school district doesn't seem to be considering what's going to happen when they get a positive test, which they will. And now they did. The principal from Columbus School tested positive, so they had to put out an announcement, and they did not put it out district-wide. They only put it out within the Columbus School community, but I got a copy, that the principal tested positive, that he was there on March 26th and March 29th, that everybody who worked at the school during those 2 days was now on 14-day quarantine. They were going to have to bring in a whole new staff. They're going to have to shut down the space and disinfect it. By now, it's presumably reopened. I haven't been there yet. I'm probably going to go swing by today or tomorrow to see what's happening at these locations. I haven't been there in about a week. And obviously, you have the issue of everybody who came through there. And, they're putting out a message to the families that have kids at the school who they have emails for. But anybody could have shown up there, and they don't really keep track of who's coming in there. So then I said, you're not getting names and addresses and phone numbers and emails. So how would you communicate with them? They can't. So exactly the scenario I warned about happened at this location. I don't think it's going to be the last, and I don't think it's for me to say. And we don't have the data, so I'm not going to say it definitively, but we do have to wonder how much this doubling of cases over the past week or so has to do with exposure from the food distribution.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of it has, Bob, and I'm so glad that that original story you did wound up correcting a huge part of it.
Well, and there's an example of a story that made people mad. Okay, my answer to that is, you're mad at me? You should be thanking me.
Yeah.
I probably helped you prevent a lot of problems, and I don't need to detail them here, but I think you can kind of draw the conclusions as to what it would have meant if they had not taken steps to fix it. But I think also it was too little too late, and here's a guy who was there on March 26th and March 29th. They were supposed to be taking everybody's temperature and checking everybody, and the nurses were, especially at the school facilities. So how did he go from the 26th to the 29th working at the school and he wasn't being tested, or was he asymptomatic, or, we don't really know. Okay. Mm-hmm. But obviously any of the hundreds of people who went through the school on those 2 days now is potentially exposed. In theory, all those people should be notified to quarantine for 14 days.
Yep.
So now you've got all these families who were there to go get food because they don't have food for their kids, and now they're all on lockdown. I mean, it's just very frustrating. Mm-hmm. We're not getting a full set of answers, and that's the bad news. Is that I think the sort of carelessness that existed hasn't been fully addressed, and this idea somehow that people are showing up to get food from the schools or from these partner facilities at 95 Lincoln and at Bracey houses, that none of them actually have coronavirus is and was absurd. And obviously it turns out that now that maybe that wasn't true.
But Bob, I trust you will stay on this story and continue to report. And as you know, we'll break into our regular programming to get an update on this story. Thank you very, very, very much. We look forward. Now tell people the name of that new show again.
Well, first of all, the show that's up is Talk of the Sound.
Right.
Podcast.
No, but the other one, right.
Words and Edgewise,
right.
That is in pre-production at this point, and hopefully we'll have something in the coming weeks.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Please stay well. My best to everybody. And if your wife needs somebody to talk to, she can call me. Take care. Bob Cox, all everybody, right, managing editor, publisher of Talk of the Sound. Now, I'm going to do something unusual, not unusual. But this particular virus has touched me in a very direct way. And a friend of mine of 55 years, believe it or not. And I need to say something about that. I have someone who wants to listen to what I have to say, so I'm going to get him on the phone because he's having trouble picking us up. I wish these phones would do what they say they do. There we go. We'll be right back. Folks, it's 10:06, and we thank Bob Cox for that. This is Radio Westchester. Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone, and we broadcast live from this station here in New Rochelle. And I'm actually going to put on a little bit of what you might call hockey music for this. Now, the guy I'm going to talk about would prefer I did this. We'll put on music perhaps more suitable as we get rolling. But as many of you have been through, okay, I lost someone, and it's not just me. A huge community lost someone this week. And I share this story because as someone who has and runs a radio station, I get to make a public tribute to him. But also, there's a cautionary tale here. We cover the COVID-19 virus here every day, and we try and keep things in perspective, and we try and be sensible in how we report the news, how dangerous it is, and also how unlikely it is that the average person will succumb to it. I'll tell you about a friend of mine. Now, he was no spring chicken, 69 years old, and probably you, my guess is, don't know anyone who's 69 years old who was in as good a shape as he. And the way I put it earlier in the program is to the extent that he could be, he was probably in Olympic shape. He was a hockey player, still was, very good one. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. I know him since I and he are 15 years old. We're only 6 months apart. I met him in the best, it was a roller hockey league, the best roller hockey league in the planet, back in 1964, 65. And he, another fella by the name of Joe Shripper, and myself, I joined their team, was a junior team, and then we went on to play in the men's league, at the age of 16. Just a wonderful hockey league. Sent guys to the NHL, by the way. Very tough, very hard time in the 60s and 70s. We were kids, but we held our own. We did okay, and we all went on to have pretty good, if you will, careers in that league, and then played off and on for the last 55 years together. About 24 years ago, we took our team, called the Blackhawks, to an over 30 league in New Jersey. We've been there ever since in one way, shape, or form. Even at one point, extending to 3 different teams because all the different people that joined us, people aged out. And it's kind of fun. We had the Blackhawks, we had the Old Hawks, and the Silverhawks. And you went down as you got older or slower, but there was always a place to play. And my friend Bob, we used to call him Cookie, still do actually, he was the last one of us. He stayed in such wonderful shape, and it's like his skills never eroded. He kept playing A hockey until even he couldn't play A anymore, but still played at such a very high level, mostly B, occasionally back in A. Just a terrific player. And I was playing with him. In fact, there's a good friend of mine who's on my cell phone now who has played with him and with me for 40 years. In fact, he came to the team, and a couple of other guys came to the team when they were 15, 16, after he and I, Bob and I and Joe, were in our 20s and 30s. And anyway, this is about Bob. So 55 years of hockey, terrific shape, a great leader. We called him the captain. He captained almost every single team he was ever on because he was a natural leader and the type, the John Wayne type, but not the jerky part of John Wayne. He was the strong, silent type, and very smart, very good businessman, very generous friend. He and I were in business together over the years, and when I would try another venture, he would invest with me, and and never wanted to brag about it. Never told anybody else what he did. And really good friend of people, good family guy, wonderful human being. So here he is, 2 weeks ago. And he and I were still playing hockey. I just turned 70. He would have in a couple of months. And we would always kid that we were playing with the house's money. Look at us. We're 70 years old. And we're still skating pretty well and still doing this thing that we love. And in fact, it was only 2 weeks ago I called him up. And for those of you here in New Rochelle, I found a place to skate and stay in shape. Now, if you're listening, New Rochelle management, yes, I found the basketball court over in Flowers Park with nobody on it, with a wonderful surface, and I went over there with my roller stuff and kept in shape. And I called my friend, Cookie, we called him, Bob Carucci's his full name, and I called him up, and I says, hey, Captain, that was his nickname for the whole 50 years. Mine was Doc, and we'll talk about it for another day. He says, what's up, Doc? And I said, guess what? I found a place to skate. We were like kids. I'm going to stay in shape, and when we come back to our over 50 team, which we were both playing on together, I'm going to be the only guy in shape. And he said, I'm going to skate. His house had like one of those drive up and roundabouts. Yeah, I'm probably going to skate in front of the house. Right now I'm bored. This is 12 days ago, folks. Perfectly healthy. He says, I'm going to skate out there and get in shape. He goes, but I'm not, very energetic guy, very successful in business. Again, Olympic shape, believe me, terrific shape. Didn't even need water on the bench. Just a bull. 6'6", maybe 6'1", 195, solid, 200, just great shape. Last guy I ever expect to get sick. And so I kidded him about that. And he says to me, I'm going to go nuts in the house, because he was working from home. He designed restaurants and sold restaurant equipment. And he said, no, I'm going to fix my basement because I'm bored. It's all right, Cappy. I'll talk to you in a few days. So it's a few days later, and like the little kid that I was, and he and I would always do this, and very few people knew that this side of us, even though we were playing hockey together and had been in business, he had his life, I have mine. But whenever someone older would have a problem with their health or something, we'd give our regards, and he and I would talk, and we'd say, wow, we're still playing. We're lucky at our ages, blah, 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 like kids. And so I guess it was the next Thursday came along, and I found another place to skate down in Jersey. So I called him again to brag about this place I found, and he didn't sound good, and he could barely have a breath. It's just 4 or 5 days later. He says, "Yeah, I got the bug, Doc," and and he was halting with his breathing, and this is a guy super strong, the guy we all looked up to. He was, he was the man, and in the best possible way. No braggadocio or anything, just a great hockey player and a great businessman, great family man, and just a solid person. And he says, it's like I got hit by a bus. I can't even walk 2 feet, having trouble breathing. I says, geez, I was just talking to you the other day. He said, yeah, me, I have it. My wife has it. My daughter has it. Now, his wife and daughter are fine. And then, so I called him a couple of days later on into the next weekend, and I said, you any better? He said, only a hair. And then within 2 days, he was in the hospital, and as we could only text him because he had 100% oxygen on. And at one point, he even said, typical Bob, he even said, I'm going to beat this mother effer. And he did it. He didn't actually spell it out. He said it in little initials. And, those of us who were close with him, we'd send, little texts and hang in there, blah, blah, blah. And we go on into 2 days later. And I won't get into all the texts, but I suffice to say, he says, hey, my prayers are with you, hang in there. And he suggested that he probably was ready to go on a respirator. And I said, hang in. And the last thing he ever said to me was, I'm hanging. Well, within 24 hours, this past Saturday, this man, this bull of a man, this decent human being, a guy who was in this rink where we play for the last 24 years, as well known and well respected as anyone, passed on. That's heartbreaking. And now this isn't the only such story, folks. This is happening in homes all across the country. And I'm just fortunate enough, as is my friend on the phone here and others, that we were part of a community, this hockey community. And when you talk about melting pot, I mean conservatives, liberals, we kid one another, moderates, everybody from stone layers to dentists to whatever. And even the enemies, eventually in hockey, such a cool community, they're your friends. And now, Bob never stopped, 56 years, and from the time he put on skates, played every consecutive year. The rest of us took this time off. I went into coaching for a while. He did this, he did that. And he's the last guy. And this is the part for all of you, as I give a tribute to my friend, that you need to be aware of. This is not the flu. This is not a heavy cold. It is not. It should not be minimized the way some say. It's a killer. And for it to take this powerful, strong, healthy man and take his life so quickly, a lot of us are brokenhearted, and the whole hockey community. You should have seen Facebook on Sunday. People still don't believe it. I don't believe it. My friend of 55 years is gone. And I just wanted to say to him, wherever he may be, and his family, that you are loved, that a lot of people cared about you, my friend. I am going to miss you. We used to run teams together, businesses together. It's just a heartbreak. And his wife and daughter, wonderful people, they're doing fine. Again, the nature of this disease, why it took him, we won't know for a while until they figure this disease out. But it was impossible to have a microphone and not wish Godspeed to my friend. And my friend on the phone, I'll just give you his first name, George, and others. We've been playing with him for years. None of us have slept in the last 2 nights because I just don't believe that he's gone. And his family couldn't see him when he died. We couldn't really call him because he was on oxygen towards the end and he couldn't talk much. And we won't be able till God knows when. So the part of this I want to share with you is we're all going to go through something like this. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. And for my friends who are listening and family who love Bob, Cookie, all I would say is that this was a guy that enjoyed every day of his life. And I wish I could tell you the last joke he told me only 3 weeks ago, but it's a family show, and it was as funny as all get all. I'll tell George after we get off the air. But please, if you're religious, say a prayer for my friend who died way too young in the prime of life. He just bought a house in Florida that he loved. I say this on his behalf, but for all of us who've lost someone to this virus. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll just a little more respectful and solemn music from my friend, and then we will close it out with the kind of music that they play when someone scores a goal. Bob Carucci, 69 years old. God bless you, Bobby, wherever you are. We love you, my friend. And this is for my friend who scored many a great goal. Heck, 50 years ago, he and I were coming down on a rush in the longest overtime game in league history, 6 hours. And who gets the winning goal but Bob Carucci? This music is for you, wherever you are. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.